One and welcome everybody. It is noon on Saturday. That means it is time for you to join the hippest trip on the internet. Don't worry, you're right on time to get on that train of positivity before we run you down at the station. So we're going to talk about all kinds of interesting topics today. And I'm very, very excited because I've got an amazing roundtable of folks, some of my absolute favorite people. And starting out with, I'm very, very excited to talk to George Donnelly, but we'll get to him in a second. First, I want to talk about what this roundtable is. And it is about expatting or expatriation. What that means is that, say you're living at a place and you see, I know I have viewers from all over the world. So your country is getting less and less free, more and more restrictive. It's just not what you remember when you were younger. And I go through that in the US. Like every year or two, it gets less and less free here. And to the point where I don't even think I can really even run a business or do anything without just jumping through an insane amount of hoops. And it's just not what it was. And luckily, there's still some countries out there that are good to do business and are more free than the U.S. or maybe the country you're living in. So I'm going to bring in a few people that have decided to expat and they live in other countries. And George is one of my man. We've been friends a long time, and he's been through it. And he did a lot of research before he pulled the trigger. So I'm going to let science fiction author George Donnelly, here we are, introduce himself. Go ahead, George, tell the audience who you are and a little about yourself, and then why you decided to move.
Hi, Taryn. Really great to be here. Let's see. Well, I am an author marketing consultant, science fiction author, freelance writer, former libertarian activist, blogger, you name it. I've done a whole bunch of stuff. Let's see. Why did I decide to leave the U.S.? Well, I don't know. I was just really bored. I I had just kept having the same kinds of dumb situations and dumb conversations over and over again. Dumb jobs in Chicago that I hated in investment banking, and every day I'd ride the Chicago L and listen to people's stupid conversations about the most boring trivialities of life, and I just thought there has to be something more somewhere else. And so the first place I went was Japan, and at the very least there I couldn't understand it when people talked about their boring trivialities, so that was an immediate relief.
Oh man, so we're gonna take us down this trip, but I get what you mean, and I think some of the listeners might understand what you mean, that I feel like I live on a different planet than everybody else in the nation. Like when I go out to a public event, I have no idea what they're talking about, and I don't care usually because it's just like pop culture stuff that doesn't mean or matter anything in my life. But that seems to be like the major focus. I know there's people like you and I out there, and a lot of the listeners that want more out of life. So take us through your journey. You went to Japan, and what happened?
Yeah, so I got a job teaching English in Japan. That was interesting because this was 1997. So that was hard because I couldn't speak the language. And luckily in Japan, everywhere, wherever you want to go to eat, you can just point at plastic food. They have every item on the menu, they have it made in plastic. And so you can just point to what you want and you're fine, So I was able to eat. But it was quite a big adjustment because the whole culture shock thing, the crowd, the overcrowded, sardine can trains, to get to work every day. Everyone's so obsequiously polite on the surface, not so much under the surface, but certainly on the surface. And I had a few different jobs there. And one of the most interesting things I did was I got a job where I would go around to universities and companies and teach English there. And that was a real experience because I went everywhere from universities, some of the best universities in Kyoto, to a Kawasaki nuclear submarine plant in Kobe. And that was just an exciting experience. I got to see so much of Japan. And I was there for 4 years. So,
Wow. Now,
yeah.
do you, for people kind of curious how that works, because you were an American citizen, did you just keep renewing a visa and living over there working, or did you kind of go underground and just not come back, or like what? How did you do it?
Well, at the time there was this company called Nova, which later went bust. But the great benefit of Nova was you could interview for a job in. I went to Boston to interview. You could interview for the job in the United States, and if they hired you, they would get you your work visa. And so I arrived in Japan with a job and a work visa. It doesn't work quite the same way these days, but that was extremely convenient. And that job paid pretty poorly and had very long hours. So within 4 months, a friend of mine got me a much better job. And then I just kind of went on from there. I think the first visa was for a year. And then since I had a job in Japan, it was the workplace, the company, they would sponsor your visa. This whole system of people sponsoring you and backing you up in Japan is a big thing. You can't get a visa. You can't even rent an apartment unless you have a company backing you up, or at least that was the case in 1997. And so after the first year, they were like, "Oh, okay, he knows what he's doing." They gave me, or maybe it was after the second of two 1-year visas, they gave me a 3-year visa. And at that point, so after I'd been there for a couple of years, I'd had a couple different jobs. At that point, I could have worked like freelance, like independently. Like a few classes with X company, a few classes with Y company, and not had an official sponsor, or just had a more fluid, flexible work situation. But that's how I got started legally.
Wow, well, that's pretty interesting. And as far as back then, I can't. You weren't married yet. You were like a single guy doing this stuff.
Yeah, I was single.
Okay, and then you came back to the U.S. for a while because we met way after that. You were doing Fiji. I remember you were doing Fiji activism when you met. I think that was when you and I forgot the old guy's name, Julian Heiklin. Julian, we're getting in trouble. Jim Babs.
Yeah,
James
that
Babs.
was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was a good time. So, for you guys who don't know what we're talking about, he was doing fully informed jury. And you go out and hand out pamphlets and stuff and all that. But before we jump into that, when did you come back and take us through the next cycle? So you kind of just worked in Japan, kind of felt it out, but you didn't change your residency and move there and stuff. You just kind of were living there by visa.
Yeah, yeah, I just had a work visa. I was there for 4 years, and Japan is, or at least was at the time, 2001 or so, extremely crowded. I mean, they had at the time, it was like 130 million people in a space the size of California, and something like, if I remember correctly, 90% of the country is mountainous and it's not suitable for living. So huge numbers of people packed into small areas. And it just became so tense for me anytime I stepped out onto the street, because I would walk down the street and people would bump into me, like literally bump into me, because it was so tight, so narrow, everything, and so many people. And I would get on the train and people be rubbing against me. And if I had to get on the train in the early morning in rush hour, I mean, it was literally a sardine can. I mean, in Japan, some people have probably seen these videos on the internet. They have people in the train station whose job is specifically to push masses of people onto the trains.
Oh my gosh.
It just became so stressful. I decided to leave. And so in 2001, I came back to the U.S. For a few months, and then I went to Colombia.
And now, have you been, because I met you, were you just visiting in the U.S. when you would come up for stuff like that, or were you living here?
Well, after I was in Colombia for a few years, I don't know, my wife at the time really wanted to come and stay in the U.S. So yeah, around 2009, we moved up to the U.S. to give it a try, and we were there for about a year and a half. And
Got it.
that's when I did all that stuff with Julian and Jimmy.
Okay, so that's when I thought you had lived here for a bit. So now, were you? What made you decide to go to Colombia? Do you have family there? Do you have connections? Or I remember me and you talking, and you were doing research at one time. You were looking at Mexico and Uruguay, and you're like, "Where's the freest country to go?" So tell us about that process and how you wound up in Colombia.
Well, at the time, in 1994, before I even went to Japan after college, I made a really good friend in Chicago who is Colombian, and he insisted that I go and visit. And this was like a year after they killed Pablo Escobar, and so I decided to go, and I just had a really good time. And before I went to Japan, I visited a couple more times. I just really liked it. So when I was done with Japan, I was just kind of like, I don't know, I'm tired of Japan. What do I do now? So I was looking at China, I was looking at different places, and I just decided Colombia is where I wanted to be. So I went there, and it wasn't really, at that point, I wasn't really looking for the freest places to live. That research I was doing a little bit later, and still really doing. But at that time, it was more like, kind of like, I don't know, just really fascinated by Colombia. Here's this country at war with itself for so long, with this vibrant culture, these nice people, these beautiful mountains. So I went there just on a tourist visa, and I got a job at a kind of an American cultural center in the city of Medellin, which is I realized later is actually a project of the U.S. Embassy. But I figured that I was like, I don't know if I really want to be working here. But so I worked there for about a year and a half, and in that process, I got married. I got that center got me a work visa, and in that process, during that time, I got married. So I got a conjugal visa, and then I started a business, kind of like a tech business. And then so I just stopped teaching, and I started working full time on the business. And then so because I was married, I had the conjugal visa, I was able to maintain my residency here.
So
on that.
Your wife's Colombian is that what I'm hearing? So that gives you a kind of visa that you can stay there as long as you want since you're married?
Yeah, I mean actually I'm divorced now, but yeah,
Oh.
that's the easy path, right? If you're single, that's not why I got married, but
No.
if you're single, you meet the right person. I mean, that's an easy way to stay in a foreign country. I don't think there's any foreign country that is not going to allow you to stay if you're married to one of their nationals. The only thing is that in some places, no matter how long you're married to one of their nationals, they're not going to give you citizenship. For example, I don't think in Japan it's possible for a non-Japanese person to get citizenship eventually.
Yeah, and then there's always sort of very kind of nationalistic rules. Like I can't remember if it's Mexico or the Philippines where you're not even allowed to own land unless you're from there. Like you have to lease it and through somebody that lives there. Like so you never technically own anything. You're just kind of like a third party living in someone else's. It's crazy. They have all these
the Philippines is nuts like that.
Yeah.
Also, if a Philippine person, let's say a Philippine person gets U.S. citizenship or Japanese residence, no, not Japanese, but U.S. citizenship, they have to give up their Philippine citizenship.
Well, it's a U.S. like that, right? You can't have multiple citizenships. I hear people having dual passports, but I thought they got rid of that. I can't remember if you can have dual citizenship.
Have multiple citizenships, yeah.
You can.
Yeah,
oh,
if you
okay.
have a passport, you're a citizen of that country,
I thought that the U.S. didn't let you do that anymore, but I wasn't sure.
Sure they do. Absolutely.
Good to know. All right, so now you go to Colombia, and the stereotype, because a lot of people feel that was Colombia had some sort of drug issues and things like that. So tell us about that. What's Colombia really like? And besides all the whatever we learned on TV.
Well, at the time when I came here in 2001 to stay, the guerrillas were actually really active. The war was still going on in a big way. And they were actually knocking down huge electrical towers that led to the cities and putting the cities into blackouts. It was a really serious situation. And that year, more than 2 million Colombians, out of a nation of about 40 million at that time, left. That's how bad the situation was. Yeah. So, but they elected a hardline president in 2002, and things changed pretty rapidly. Things got a lot better, at least for the cities. And so, there was a lot of fears. Like every Colombian person that I knew was always concerned that I was going to be kidnapped. Everybody was always like ferrying me around, like, be careful, But I never experienced anything. I've never even been robbed in Colombia. So, and things today it's like day and night. In 2001, I went to a tourist attraction about 2 hours from the city called La Piedra del Peñol. It's a giant rock. It looks like an asteroid that fell from space. It's all black. And you can climb up it. You can walk steps up to the top to have this gorgeous view of the surrounding lakes. I went there in 2001, and it was just me, my girlfriend at the time, and like 50 soldiers on a Saturday. I mean, it was nuts. But today, like, that place is just booming as a tourist attraction. Plenty of foreigners go there. And actually, Medellin is being considered like a great center of innovation, global center of innovation these days. I think they're overdoing it. They're over pumping Medellin as a wonderful city, but still, things have improved radically here.
Well, for people that are thinking about moving and they want to get out of the country, what countries would you recommend, and would you recommend Colombia? Like, for my crowd, it's going to be people that are kind of tired, that they feel like they're losing freedoms here, or that sort of thing. What country can you go to out there that would have more freedom to start a business, would have more freedom to just be left alone?
Well, the freedom in Colombia is kind of a curious thing because it's like a de facto freedom. If you look at Colombia on paper, it's one of the worst countries. There's no common law, it's Roman law. It's a federal state. It's has laws in the books, some of the laws in the books that are just ridiculous and overdone. But the fact is that when it comes to enforcement, very little is enforced. So there's a great breach between what's on paper and what really happens. I have really never been hassled here about anything. Of course, I don't really do anything that crazy. The crazy things that I do are all things that I write. But I've been looking.
Like, if you don't complain about the Colombian government, they just leave you alone. If you just want to write about whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I think I pass mostly. I'm mostly invisible here. I feel that way sometimes. Like sometimes people, I don't know. I'm 6'2". I'm fairly light skinned, blue eyes, but still sometimes people talk to me as if I was a Colombian person. I've gotten into taxis with people, and my Spanish is good, and so after a while they're like, "Oh wait, are you really not from here?" I don't know what it is.
And some reason, guys, that George never ages. Like, yeah, everybody wants to know what you do, like what your regimen is, because he looks exactly the same as he did like 20 years ago. You're doing something right, because you don't age. You look great.
It's this one weird trick, and click here. It's just $9.99.
Yeah, that's right. He'll tell you for $9.99. That's perfect.
But lately I've been getting kind of bored of being here. And so I've been looking for other places, and some of the ones that have interested me are Chile. There is a lot of economic freedom, economic and political freedom, I think, in Chile. Uruguay also was one of the first countries to legalize marijuana, if I remember correctly. And there are sizable libertarian expat presences in both those countries. Um, I think those are the top two.
Are,
Although, just from a perspective of wanting to be somewhere beautiful, I'm also looking at the Philippines. There's just a lot of natural beauty. Oh, and also being cheap. Just a lot of natural beauty and in the Philippines, and it's very cheap. And Thailand. But
yeah.
I think if there was one at the top of my list that I was going for, economic freedom, I think it would be Chile. And it's not that hard to get a resident visa either. As long as you can show you have a source of income, you spend some time there, it's relatively uncomplicated to get a resident visa. And then after a certain amount of time, you can become a citizen, and they have one of the best passports in the world as far as gaining access to places like Europe. You know, that's one thing. Like if I was gonna, for example, if I was picking country based on the value, what doors does the passport open to me? Colombia is probably one of the worst, um, because because so much drug running has been associated with Colombia, and so all these countries close their doors to Colombians in order to stop Colombian people, Colombian associated with drug running, from traveling freely there. But Chile is almost, I think it's on par with some of the European passports, as far as giving you freedom, de facto freedom of travel.
Yeah, and I think because I've looked at this for many many years too, and what it is there's really not any good countries that are out there to be free. But like George is saying, they're free de facto. What that means is they just don't put a lot of money into the police presence. They just don't harass citizens. The culture doesn't put up with stuff. It's not like it's just a whole different attitude. So you're free because it's just not as developed and it's not a government. They just don't give a lot of money to their government. Their governments aren't that big. It's not that the governments don't want power. It's just they're not big enough to do anything, and you just kind of get left alone. Is my understanding? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes, yes, that's the situation here in Colombia, because there's so much poverty, for whatever reason. Maybe it's because people's education levels, maybe it's because the federal government is so corrupt, maybe it's because of the like a guns, germs, and steel situation where just the land and its location is not that favorable. But so there's just not that much money, and of course the tax collection mechanism has been immature. They're maturing it here, but it's been immature for quite a while. They're clamping down. They're trying to collect more tax, but they've just been kind of tax starved, and
Yeah.
so they haven't really had the resources to even deal with minor, or even some major crimes, much less going around and harassing people.
And that's something that I think's interesting with South American countries is the U.S. Snuck taxes in during World War II, where they just started taking them out of paychecks. South America didn't do that. Some of the Asian countries didn't do that. So now they have educated people that when it's not what it was, 100 years ago, you can't just sneak it by. And so the other cultures just aren't putting up with it. Like they'll like beat up a taxman that comes and assesses. They'll throw taxmen out. It's crazy the stuff that they just don't tolerate. So I find it interesting how other cultures. I think the genie's out of the lamp, and I don't think it's going back in so easy.
Hmm.
You know?
Well, yeah. Well, also, I mean, some people, I think, there are many different facets to expatting. For example, some people want to start a business, and in the U.S. they may only be earning enough to kind of be treading water, economically speaking, or they may want to do something artistic, like maybe the goal is to be a novelist or whatever. And that's hard in a first world country, where the cost of living is so high, and you may, be locked into this treadmill situation where you're just earning barely enough. So cheap countries then are a really interesting option. Colombia is pretty darn cheap to live. The Philippines, Thailand, these are really good options because you can plug into the global freelancing market. You can work maybe just half of what you were working before. You can cover your expenses. You can live comfortably, and then you can have the rest of the time to pursue your startup or your art or whatever. And I think that is a really good way to kind of bootstrap yourself up another level, in terms of realizing whatever vision you have for your life.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because a lot of times when I see stories about expats, they're retired folk. They get a check from the government or they're bringing their own business. Like I make most of my money on YouTube. You make most of your money being an author and other projects. Like, do you have to bring your own money or can you actually make a living in these other cultures that the exchange rate's so low? Like, are you going to be doing stuff for 50 cents an hour there, you know?
Yeah, I really wouldn't count on making money in the place that you're moving to. For example, in Japan, a lot of expats just teach English, and like every Japanese person expects an expat to be an English teacher, and probably 95% of us were. And I tried at one point to kind of break out of that and work for a Japanese company, and there's kind of a wall there. There's a cultural
Yeah.
wall, and then there's also a legal wall in these countries. This is true also in Colombia. When you're going to get the visa to work for that company, the company has to prove that they tried to hire a national to fill that role, but that they were unable to find a qualified person. And then some of these countries also have quotas, like they can only process, X number of work visas for foreigners outside of whatever field, per year. And also, I know some people who are professionals who I would expect to see earning $100,000 or more in the United States doing something similar. And here they may be earning seven, 800, $1,000 a month, and treated poorly to boot. Some of these cultures do not have the same respect for the individual as we see in the U.S. And there's not as much respect for education. For example, in Colombia, it's been kind of disappointing for me to realize like people here just don't read. They don't read.
Oh, that's tough for being an author. That's tough. And that's I wanted to talk to you about that because that's a whole nother topic. I think I need to bring George back. Is I was an author, and I pretty much stopped writing around 2012 because my book stopped selling. And George still writes and makes a living writing. So we're gonna find out what his secret is. So one of these days, gonna have to tell us. But I was saying. Yeah, it would be tough because I think it's one of these things that would be very hard to run a real business in another country because you're always going to be treated differently. I would assume that every person's going to nickel and dime your business for because you're a rich American or whatever. So you'd kind of have to either have an internet business or some sort of check. But there's a lot of listeners here that are struggling. I see the talks all the time in the chat, and they're barely scraping by here where you could have a pretty good life in another country with the same kind of salary, right? Like they get.
Well, I mean, I have had, I would say for $1,500 a month for one person, you can live comfortably in Medellin, Colombia. I've seen other expats confirm that on their blogs and whatnot. I've even had months where I did an experiment like a year or so ago just to see how frugally I could live. And I could regularly get by, and this is with my son and two cats, and not denying ourselves, just like cooking at home all the time, just generally being frugal, regularly $700 a month. And there was one month actually $430, and this is counting expenses that I have in the U.S. Things like monthly fees on like my email marketing platform and stuff.
Got it.
So it can be very cheap. Of course, in some of the expat Facebook groups that I'm on for people in Medellin, I see people who are like, "Oh my God, groceries here are so expensive." And I was just like, "Well, what are you buying?" And he's like, "Well, I go to this special little shop to buy this imported pasta sauce that I just love, you know." And I'm like, "Dude, you're doing it all
They're
wrong."
shopping at their version of Whole Foods, and they're like, "It's so expensive." It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
man, you're at Whole Foods.
Yeah.
Um, well, George, we are bringing on Ernest Hancock. I'd like it if you want to stick around and throw your 2 cents in here,
Sure, I'll
if you
stick around.
can. Ernest.
Yeah, stay.
All
Hi,
right,
Ernie.
there you are, Ernest. I don't know if you
Hey,
caught the
George.
beginning of the show or not. We're talking to George about living in Colombia, and now he's starting the process of maybe trying to find another country. He's kind of tired of Colombia and is thinking maybe of going somewhere else. And the reason I invited Ernest Hancock on this show is
Arizona.
because because him and his wife Donna spent years researching where to go. You guys checked out all kinds of countries, New Zealand, and I remember Bill Bupert would come by and talk to you guys about it. I try to get Bill on the show, but he's like invisible. I can't find Bill anymore.
Yeah, no. He didn't want to. He's working for Raytheon now. He got to keep his job.
Oh, so he has to pretend he's not a libertarian anymore. I got it. Okay, didn't know that. He won't answer my emails. So, Ernest, I want you to go ahead and give us your 2 cents about what you found out expatting and why you decided to stay here, and maybe if you'd consider it later when, once your grandkids are old enough, or I don't know what your plans are.
Yeah, that was my biggest draw is, grandchildren. My children, when we first started looking, we had our Freedom Summit that we've done every year since '01, 3 weeks after 9/11. So that was interesting. Well, when our children were still in high school, I was like, hey, man, you go wherever dad says. That's just the way it is. And we had like a window of 2-3 years there when my oldest daughter was like a sophomore in high school. And we looked at a lot of places. New Zealand got our attention. Mark Victor, my partner on the Freedom Summit, went to New Zealand and spent like a month there. And prior to that, for like 6 months, I was on a libertarian forum or, email list or something. And we started checking it out. And this is what I found. Of all the English-speaking countries around the planet, most of them are part of the British Empire. And what I did not know is that Canada and Australia and New Zealand and all these, they all have like what we would call your Supreme Court. It go all the way up and then it's settled, it's done, and we're done. Well, not in these, I don't know, their commonwealths, their money has the Queen on it. And let's put it that way. So I'm going, okay, well, what is the ultimate authority? It comes down to what they call the Queen's Privy Council. So there is a council under the Queen, and you think you're free right up until you're not. So at the very end, and certainly I would go to New Zealand and want to express myself and keep it for the reasons why I went there. And I'm going, yep, Ernie raises his head, boom, you're on the Queen's list, So I'm going, nah, I'm good. We'll do something else. And then we started looking at in Central America, South America. We have friends in Panama and a lot of different places. And it really comes. We just had Doug Casey on the show yesterday. So he was in Buenos Aires. Well, he's of course got land in Cafayate. We have friends that have land there in Argentina, and it's just. And Doug will tell you, it's not the laws. It's mainly the culture. It's the laws in Cambodia may be Lord knows what, but who enforces them? You're a gringo on the beach, put some 2x4s together and some sticks and you got a bar. I mean, so it depends about the culture. Now, the more successful you get, of course, here they come. They, them, those that won't leave you alone. So I was always looking for, well, how do you do it? Well, Doug just knows the guy, you just got to know the family. You got to know the head political organization of the mafia or whatever, and you can get more stuff done. Well, what his big project is now, we've heard about, Roger Vere's effort to do a country that they have some sovereignty and so on. That'll be interesting to see how that goes. They're going to spend $100 million on that. And but Doug Casey's got one better. He goes, he goes, we'll be back by March. It'll be a done deal or not. And he'll come back on the show and tell us all about the Solomon Islands. Solomon Islands are like, 800-900 islands where Guadalcanal is and so on. And so he goes, there's a bunch of unpopulated islands there, and he's going there to talk to their government and their head guys and business and whatever, such as whatever's there, to have them go public. I mean, you mean public, like Wall Street public? He goes, yep, we're going to all buy stock in Solomon Islands and move there or something. So I'm going, okay, I want one, give me an island. So these ideas are, and Doug's serious about it. Doug doesn't, go lightly into this stuff. And he's tried various different areas for the same reasons, but you always come up against they, them, those. So you go to where it's the worst. I mean, where do you got to go? You got to go to Moscow, Havana, or Detroit to be free.
Right. I remember a while back there was that whole Honduras project, right, where they were going to buy a chunk of Honduras and put it in. And George, do you have a comment you'd like to ask Ernie about all this? I want to make sure you get a chance to talk.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, I mean, there really is nowhere left, to be completely free to start the anarcho-capitalist society or whatever. Although if we want to go into crazy ideas, I put forward a proposal a couple of years ago about going to Africa and doing it there, because we have multiple failed states there that, if we can get like an anarcho-capitalist market anarchist order going, and it can offer value to the inhabitants of the area, the people who already live there, well, then it can, just be the final tap that knocks over the dominoes on a lot of those failed states.
And, Doug said the same thing.
In about 50 years or so, 50, 60 years, Africa's going to be 40% of the global population. That may be the 21st century powerhouse of the global economy. So,
yeah, no, Doug was saying exactly what you just said, George. He was going Africa, 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 Africa. But the thing is that, I think China has been, we know how to do business. We come in with a suitcase of money. It's a hell of a lot cheaper than, F-15 with bombs, but that doesn't make the they, them, those war machine money. So that's not how they want to do it. But when they started, I remember when I first started doing radio, like 03 to 05, around then there, Karen Katowski, she was still at the Pentagon Special Plans next to desk of whatever. And her deal was, Karen Katowski, as Lieutenant Colonel in the Air Force at the Pentagon, was Africa, North Africa. That was her specialty. Well, then they created Africa Com or Con or whatever it is. It's a command, Africa Com. So I'm going, they didn't have an Africa? I mean, what's the deal, man? We don't hate on Africa enough? I mean, why are we ignoring Africa? Well, we're not anymore. And the reason is all the resources that are there, the population that's coming, and here come China. They say, hello. Well, we kicked them out of Libya and destroyed that. And so, U.S. is going down for so many, I can't even count how many reasons, but it's going to be through economics. It's going to be the petrodollar be a-going. And we get into cryptocurrencies. If you guys talk about what's going on there at all, I'm interested in what George's experience in Colombia is.
I want to jump to that in a sec, but I'm going to let George have the floor in a sec. But I see Barry's trying to come in and out. Barry, if you're there, you can turn on your mic and jump in, and I'll work you in here. I don't know if Barry's. I see him.
Hey, Barry.
Barry Cooper, if you guys know him, he's been on the show before. But Barry, whenever you get everything working, just come on in. All right, George, go ahead and answer that question. Cryptocurrencies overseas. Can you actually, like, I know if you have Bitcoin or whatever, how easily can you cash it out in Colombian dollars? Is there somebody taking it? Can you?
It is so easy. Let me tell you. The cryptocurrency boom is hitting a new stage, and everybody wants to get into it. It is so easy to cash it out here in Colombia. The primary method is localbitcoins.com, of course, but there are plenty of independent dealers. Of course, it's a buyer beware situation. Plenty of people have gotten ripped off. I've heard their stories. It's a shame, but local Bitcoins is a pretty reliable way to do it. And there are people on that platform all over the world. And I think that is going to be the #1 vector for building a free society in the future.
Well, is it Bitcoin SegWit that they're using, or you're meaning cryptocurrencies in general? We got Bitcoin to the moon. I put it up there. It's Bitcoin Cash to the moon, because I am so sick of Bitcoin transaction fees. I'm done. We can see this coming. So I got my Bitcoin stories, but I tell you, the crypto is definitely going to go. But so has it been one currency over another?
Well, sure. I mean, everybody's heard of Bitcoin. I mean, it's going to maintain that name recognition dominance for a while. But it's beginning to look with all these new cryptocurrencies coming out: IOTA, Cardano, Bitcoin Cash. There's so many of them. Stellar Lumens. It's beginning to look more and more dinosauric. In my opinion. And so I think it's going to lose the crown soon enough. And people in different areas are going to hear about different cryptocurrencies. They're going to adopt them for different reasons. And it's going to be a multipolar cryptocurrency world very, very soon, I think.
That's interesting. I never thought about that different cultures are going to cling to different kinds of cryptocurrency. That maybe they'll have one that's popular in Colombia that's not popular, in Argentina.
Transaction fees, I guarantee that.
Yeah, the transaction fees are
not going to be moving, lattes for $15-$40 or something to transaction. I mean, are you freaking kidding me?
Yeah.
And I got my opinion as to what's going on, but that's another thing.
For expats out there, guys, let me ask you this though. Isn't cryptocurrencies the best way to move your money around the world with you without having to fly with it, bring it places, have it taken from you? I mean, isn't that what the future will be?
No, it's not. You're not allowed. Einstein says if you have a crypto wallet, you're not allowed to do it without them knowing about it, and it's illegal, and you had more than 10,000 in your brain.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's wonderful. I mean, imagine you can, you can convert assets into cryptocurrency. You can have it sit there, and as long as you are vigilant, you can maintain your value, and you can go wherever you want, convert it into local currency, and it's getting easier and easier to do that with these debit cards that are coming out, and no one has to be the wiser.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Which is why the man doesn't like it.
Yeah, that we can go around the world with our own money and not have it taken, and that's amazing. Hey, Barry, if you're there and listening, unmute and come on in. I remember last time I think we had like a half-hour lead-in with him where it took him a while to get everything set up. So, Barry, I don't know what's going on. He's in Mexican time. He's on Mexico time. So feel free to jump in anytime. I feel bad because I see his little icon there. Go ahead, George.
Can I ask George some questions? I haven't seen him in a while. George, can you come on the show?
Well, I'd love to.
Yeah. Donna will send you goodies and we'll get you on. So I won't eat up all this, but I tell you, man, Colombia. Why are you thinking of leaving? What's happening?
No, nothing. I mean, the tax situation has changed. The tax authorities are getting a little more aggressive. They've changed the laws so that even people who earn very minimal amounts of money now have to file the end of year tax reports. But in general, I don't know. I was never here for political reasons, and it's really not for the political reasons that I'm thinking about leaving. It's just because I'm bored. I'm just really bored with this culture. I speak fluent Spanish, and I don't know. It's like what I was telling Taryn earlier when I was in Chicago working in investment banking on the train every day, hearing everybody's stupid conversations about the most boring trivialities. And now I hear all of that here, and it just becomes so boring. And I'd like to do something new. I also, I'd like to go back to the beaches of Thailand or the Philippines. And I'd like to show some of those places to my son too. He's getting old enough to see that.
How old is he?
He's 11.
Oh, yeah. It's South Park age, man. You're like, you need to get on it.
Yeah, but really, I mean, like, if you look at the world and you say, I want to go to a place that's really completely politically free. I mean, that place just doesn't exist. If we want to make that happen, we're gonna have to make some
build a ship, the Precariat.
We're gonna have to make some serious moves. So I don't know. I just kind of want to like float around and have some fun, do my thing, without really getting too wrapped up in the paperwork, so to speak.
Well, I mean, what is it that you're looking to accomplish? You just want to get away from, stimulate your life. All of a sudden you found yourself crypto rich and I can go somewhere else. I mean, what are you doing?
No, I'm not crypto rich. No, what am I looking to accomplish? I don't know. Change. I feel like I'm in a rut personally.
Where'd my coffee go?
Oh, Barry's with us. Hey, Barry Cooper. You figured out the on switch. What's happening?
Hi, Barry.
Found the on switch. Hello, everybody. Good,
Barry, you remember Ernest
Mr.
Hancock, of course,
Hancock.
and George
Of
Donnelly.
course,
Hopefully.
Mr. Donnelly. Of course, Mr. Hancock and Donnelly. I'm
Hello, Barry.
glad to be joining y'all.
Um,
My
well,
pleasure.
yeah, Barry, I don't know how much of the conversation you heard, but basically it got into cryptocurrencies there about how easy they are to cash out overseas these days and how that's going. But for people that don't know you or just watching you for the first time on the show, could you take a minute or two and tell them the story about how you got to Mexico? Because that's why did you expat and how did it happen?
Well, 11 years ago, by the way, Doctor, good to be back on your show.
Yeah.
11 years ago, I released, I was one of the United States top drug enforcement agents, and I released a series of videos titled Never Get Busted that taught people how not to get busted for pot. That led to an internet reality show called Cop Busters, which I actually have tattooed on my arms, the Cop Busters. I set traps for local law enforcement and caught them in illegal raids and stealing money, things of that nature. They retaliated on me heavily. I was arrested 4 times. My wife at that time, who's dead now, she's passed away since, unfortunately. Yeah, that's a tragic. I think she was murdered in the Florida Keys 3 months ago.
Oh, Barry, I didn't even know about that.
Yeah,
What?
Candy.
What?
Yeah, Candy. Y'all remember Candy?
Yeah, I
Well,
remember
her and I-
Candy.
What happened?
Well, let me, Mr. Hancock, give me just a second, and I'll get to that part. I may have jumped ahead. So, her and I did this Cop Buster reality show, and the police raided us twice, misdemeanor raids. They took my autistic son for 1.5 years, and put me in jail 4 times, my wife in jail, my ex-wife at that time, three times. So we pretended to take a cruise, a Christmas cruise from Florida, and we got off the cruise ship in Aruba. I already had a speedboat and a guide arranged to take my family and I, which was my 2 daughters, my autistic son that we got back, and my now deceased wife. We took a speedboat from Aruba to Venezuela. There was no extradition there. That's back when Chavez was still alive. And we were in danger of being arrested for parental kidnapping, and my son did not have a passport. But as a family, we wanted to be together, and I knew at that time they had arrested me enough, and I had so many death threats from the police, and I could tell the last time they arrested me, they wanted to shoot me. There's no question I would be in prison, or I wouldn't be alive right now had I not left with my family. We lived in Venezuela for 1 year. It was about all I could stand. That's a rough country. And I got with some of my lawyers in the U.S. via Skype, and we talked to Brazil. We snuck through 13 border patrol checkpoints in Venezuela. As I said, my son did not have a passport, but Brazil invited us and protected us. We were the first American refugees ever in Brazil. They're like, y'all are Americans. What do you need refugee status for? But I still have my refugee card, and we lived there 1 year until I could get all my legal stuff cleared away in the United States, where my son could get his passport. As soon as he got his passport, we flew to Mexico, where I lived in Mexico, Mazatlan, Mexico, for 2 years. The last 2, 3, 4 years was very rough on our marriage, my wife and I. As you know, I'm an addiction specialist now. I have a drug rehab center here in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, and I've learned a lot about addiction, my own addictions and other people's addictions. And addiction is a temporary brain disorder. It is not a disease. It's a temporary brain disorder that does not have to be fatal. Unfortunately, my wife, because of all the arrests and her son being taken away and having to flee the U.S., she didn't make it through all that as well as I did, perhaps. So she left with my son, actually went and had a romantic relationship with one of my best friends in the world in Florida. It hurt a lot, but you know, you can't help when somebody falls in love. That is a involuntary reaction that you can't blame somebody for. So I actually blessed them getting together. That lasted about 6 months, and she started dating my other best friend in East Texas. And 3 months ago, they took a vacation to the Florida Keys, and in knee-deep water, she drowned. And the newspapers and all the reports are, the police are investigating it as a homicide. So it's just been...
Wow.
Oh, Barry, I didn't know about that, man. I don't know how I missed it. I'm sorry.
Barry.
Oh, that's all right. That's all right. She's the mother of my kids. Was the hardest. I didn't have any romantic interest in her other than just being friends, you know, because her and I did a lot together. She was a wonderful wife at the time. But I'm happily remarried now to a beautiful Filipina lady. She's 42 years old. I'm 48. And we're in the process of opening our... Anyway, so when we got the divorce in Mazatlan, I moved to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, where I am now, and have lived for 3 years without having to move. And that feels wonderful because I've moved 24, 25 different places in a matter of 3 years.
Do you feel under attack still?
No, I don't. And that's a good question. I don't feel under attack anymore. And the reason is without going into great detail, I have what do you call?
Unwritten understanding with the man.
Yes. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Yeah. Ernest, an unwritten understanding that as long as I don't bust cops any longer, as long as I don't work the field, go out into the street and set traps, and that's what really bothered them. And I can talk all I want. I can remain the government's harshest critic. I can continue to grow my fan base as I've been doing.
But no damn videotape.
Right. And I'm still doing expert witness. You know, I keep a stack of cases on my desk where I have not quit helping Americans be released from nonviolent drug charges. But yeah, no more videotaping cops, and they'll leave me alone.
Hey, George, did you have a question for Barry? You want to ask him something? I saw you nodding your head.
No, I was just... What a story, and how wonderful it is that you're finally established there, Barry, and sounds like you're on a good track now.
Well, thank you, man.
I'm interested in where you're living, you know, about expatriating, and I'm wondering the expatriation to Mexico there, you know, tell me about it. I'm interested in what life is like and the government and how they leave you alone, taxes, how much paperwork for kids.
Also, while you're on that, how do you get to run a clinic? Like, you know, if I ever wanted to do some doctoral work back down there, how do you do that there? Like,
well, it's interesting. For one, you know, we all understand my take on government. I don't agree with any group of people using force unless it's for self-defense of persons or property. That stated, the government here in Mexico is the best government I can find in terms of peace. And the government here in my city is the cartel. The cartel is not a gang of people running around cutting heads off, y'all. The cartel is the de facto local and state government here. Now, there is the federal government that supersedes the cartel here, but when the federal government, who usually keeps their nose out of cartel business, when they're in town, we have to do what they say, and there's not much of a change. But it's basically the police here that are driving around in police cars, and it's cartel. They're the government. And the cartel here does not allow two things. There's only two rules: no violence, and you can't sell drugs. Because they sell the drugs. The drugs they sell are all packaged exactly the same. You get the same amount for the same price. You can buy the drug, go to your house, and there are absolutely no raids here. The difference in the cartel here and the cartel in the United States, which is the DEA, one of the largest cartels, the DEA smuggles drugs, kills people, smuggles guns, smuggles cash. They do all the same thing the cartels here do, except the cartel in the United States is raiding 50,000 homes per year and arresting its citizens for the drugs they sell them. Here, you don't go to jail for drugs. You only go to jail and get in trouble here if you sell the drugs or if there's any violence. This is the only place on planet Earth I've been able to get along with men. In the United States, I guess because I'm a big old Texas boy that talks kind of loud, I couldn't go to a club or a bar without somebody, you know, bumping my shoulder or trying to pick a fight or flipping me off or something like that. And Venezuela, I had to knock a couple of guys out there. They were trying to kill me, literally. Brazil, I got knocked out once. Them boys can fight down there in Brazil. But I haven't been in a fight in 5 years here in Mexico. I think maybe one.
Hey, you miss it? You sound. Hey, are you missing it or are you glad?
No, I'm glad. I'm 48. You know, I had to find. I don't know. I was looking at my watch, and I'm 44 years old and still in street fights. Something's got to change. Well, here in Mexico, I've not seen one bar fight. I've not seen one act of violence here. The reason being, it's the death penalty. If a Mexican harms a tourist here or an expat like me, they take them to, like they're taken to jail, but they really don't take them to jail. They kill them. Because if I get hurt, or my daughter, she's 24 years old, she lives here in Mexico with her husband. My wife lives here. My other daughter recently came to Puerto Vallarta to have her baby, so the baby would have dual citizenship. And they can walk out 3, 4 in the morning, and they're actually protected by the cartels. Nobody will lay a hand on them, because if they do, it gets in the newspapers, and overnight, Puerto Vallarta will lose billions of dollars in revenue. Not only that, I happen to live in the city that houses the top government officials, or the top cartel officials' families live here, and they want peace. And the Mexican people, they understand peace. They don't like war. They will war, but they don't like it. They're not like the Americans. So for me, this place is heaven. No jail, no raids. I can smoke all the weed I want. No bar fights. It's very inexpensive to live. For instance, I'm in a penthouse condo suite right now that overlooks the city and the ocean, and it's situated in the Sierra Madre Mountains. A pad like this would be $7,000 to $8,000 a month in Florida or California. I'm paying $850 a month, fully furnished, and that's anything delivered to my door on a motorcycle I want. Tacos, groceries.
That's
It's kind of like being in the eye of a hurricane, though, and saying, you know, hey, look, there's no clouds in the sky.
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure what you're equating that to, so I don't know whether to agree with that or not.
Well, if
Well,
you're
are
in
there
the
high
eye of the
winds
hurricane, everything's calm, but the hurricane eye wall is about to hit you.
Oh, so you're probably talking about the rest of Mexico may not be as safe. Is that what you mean?
No, what I'm saying is, you are essentially, if you know the drug cartels in Mexico are a hurricane, you're in the eye of that hurricane, and the eye of the hurricane is very peaceful. You know, a real
Yeah,
hurricane. If you're in the eye, it's very peaceful.
true
You're in the
that.
eye of that hurricane.
Yeah, well, but see, I don't see the drug cartels as being a hurricane. I
Um,
see them as a government, just like any other government. And
maybe.
when it comes wartime, to war with another government, their helicopters with their machine guns and start cutting heads off and ripping stuff apart. No different than any government that goes to war. So if I'm living in the eye of a hurricane, then there's the eye of a hurricane in every country.
Yeah, and
You know, maybe
Well, the
Washington.
idea, because George is from Colombia, I've been watching the series on Netflix, Narcos, and you just see the failure of the drug war. I mean, that's just neon flashing example of that. But the people suffered when the government and the cartels went head to head, and they're like, oh, you're here for peace and prosperity. Well, guess what? We're going to take that peace and prosperity away from the government, side of it, and because you're not leaving us alone. So if the drug war went away, or they weren't enforcing it, like it seems like what's going on there, you have a peaceful coexistence with the drug lords, and yeah, we're cool as long as you're not challenging us. Like when we went to Acapulco, there's headless bodies on the beaches. I'm like, okay, what was that about? Well, it had something to do with they were messing with something they shouldn't have been, and I just don't go over there. So I'm wondering if the future, when they less and less drug war, more and more decriminalization, legalization, whatever you want to call it, I'm wondering if the drug cartels are going to be supportive of that, or are they going to go to war to keep it illegal to maintain profits?
Well, it's a very good question, and they'll do both. But in my opinion, Mr. Hancock, I don't see any way of stopping the end of the drug war. I think the day of legalization has already been agreed upon through secret United Nations agreements, and the importers of drugs, heroin, cocaine, marijuana, methamphetamine, will become the legal importers, no different than prohibition in the United States. All of a sudden, one night, the Italian wineries that were the drug lords then smuggling it into Al Capone, the wine, and the liquor companies such as Jack Daniels, they all became legitimate overnight and could bring those billions or millions of dollars of black market money that was going under the table. Now it can be assumed legally. See, that's, people have asked me for years, when will they legalize marijuana? And I explain, well, if you just legalize marijuana, there's a butterfly effect, a huge butterfly effect, and the billions of underground dollars that governments depend on to feed their populations, but more importantly to those governments to fund their secret wars. As soon as they can bring that black market money to the surface and make it legal, or have it laundered basically, then marijuana will become legal. And they're doing that now through taxation. So the United States government, through taxation and licenses, and they're still putting people in jail for different charges, like they have too much weight or driving while drugged instead of possession of marijuana. Now they're putting people in jail for having THC in their blood. So they're still realizing these same dollars, but it looks legal now, and the cartels will be able to continue importing their brand legally. So I see prohibition lifting, and I see the cartels, like they are now, working closely with the DEA and having these UN agreements. You know, I personally don't think Chapo is in New York in a prison right now. I think that's his double. That sounds crazy. It sounds wild, but we all know presidents and kings and such have doubles. We know Chapo had a double. Chapo's a very powerful man. You know, Forbes magazine placed him as one of the wealthiest men in the world. He's worth billions of dollars. And the man also has a lot of political power, too much to just be easily arrested and taken to New York.
You know, one thing
where I live.
I'm sorry. One thing I just wanted to, so people kind of get an idea, I wanted to look at a map because we're here in Arizona. So it's, you know, we go to Rocky Point and so on when, you know, people aren't dying. But you have the Gulf of California and or Sea of Cortez, or what they call it. And at the top of that, as it goes up close to Arizona, it's closer for us to go to Rocky Point from Phoenix than it is San Diego. So a lot of times we'll go down there, and I have friends that have homes on the beaches there. Now you go down the coast and you hit Mazatlan and then Puerto Vallarta, and you keep going and you get down to Acapulco. So Puerto Vallarta is closer, but it's also the shipping that's going to go into Hermosillo and them doing this, you know, Canamex highway stuff in North America and whatever, because Los Angeles, when we do have good economics, I mean, you got shipping container ships that are just lined up out there. So they're wanting to bring them in to the Pacific coast of Mexico. And I'm wondering, Puerto Vallarta in the future, you know, having economic expansion in North America, I think it's going to be, a lot of it's going to be on the west coast of Mexico. And I'm wondering if that's being prepped for, if that's what they're seeing, if, you know, they're going to be putting the wall up to keep Americans out of Mexico or what?
You know, you're the first person that has caught on to that I've heard, and I don't see how everybody else can't see it.
It's pretty obvious to me.
Yeah. Well, we need to remember too. Now, Acapulco is under a different cartel than Puerto Vallarta and even Mazatlan. It's not safe, in my opinion. I won't go to Acapulco. It's not safe. They don't have the same protection there for expats that they do here in Puerto Vallarta. Here in Puerto Vallarta, we have the largest cartel. It used to was, they were referred to as the Line or the Linea. Well, half of Chapo's organization in Sinaloa, which was Mazatlan. By the way, I live 2 miles from where Chapo was arrested and when he was arrested. In fact, I had a visiting lawyer when he was arrested there. But half of Chapo's people joined the Line here in Puerto Vallarta to make the largest drug cartel in Mexico and the most powerful, the new generation. And I think it's exactly what you just said. They're setting up to be the largest and to dominate the west side to get those shipping containers going in and out. I think all this Wallens talk is just ridiculous splatter to get American rednecks jumping up and down and screaming one way or the other, and it's to knock everybody off the balance, because the drug war will end, but drugs won't. Let me tell you, it's not that drugs are bad, it's that drugs are so good. And millions and millions and millions and millions of people are snorting and shooting and inhaling tons and tons and tons and tons of that all over the world.
Wait, I want to jump in and kind of bring us back on topic, because we've kind of way moved into the drug war, and I want to talk about more into the expat, and bring us back there, Barry. We can dive into this a little deeper at the end of the show, but for right now, and George Donnelly, thanks for coming and going. I think he had to split. I was going to ask you about actually like running a business and living there. How do you do that? To me, part of me would maybe consider going down there and doing some chiropractic, or maybe running a bed and breakfast, or doing some sort of business there to bring some extra income and to cater to other expats. Would I be allowed to do that, or would I just have to bribe my way to do that? Like, how would I do that without the least amount of hassle?
Yeah. How much paperwork does Taryn have to fill out?
Can I just set up and like bribing a cartel guy and we're good, or what's up?
Well, sort of. it's not, I don't like to use the term bribe. I just like to use, you know, you pay to get a license. But first, to live in Mexico, every American automatically gets a 6-month visa on their flight over here. So you can legally stay 6 months. When that 6 months is over, all one has to do is cross the border somewhere, go back to the US or go to Belize, somewhere like that, and turn around within a minute and come back across, and they give you another 6-month visa. And you can do that endlessly, which is what I've done. I've been here 3 years. I cannot cross the border in the US because I'm still concerned about my safety there, but I've crossed the border elsewhere every 6 months to renew my visa. In terms of opening a business, it's odd because you can't really own anything. You can buy a property, you can buy a house, you can buy a storefront, but I wouldn't trust that you're the one who's going to own it forever. No different than if you don't pay your taxes in the US on property you buy, you lose it. Well, it was like the gentleman that was on earlier is talking about the eye of a hurricane. That very well could be true in the sense we never know when war is going to break out in any country. And if you're the expat holding on to a property and the government needs it at that time to help them in a war situation, you'll lose it. What are the chances of that happening? You know, if you want to live in that type of fear and never open something, go ahead. For me, I choose to try to do what I want to do.
That's
and
it.
For here, I haven't had to have a license. I haven't had to fill out any paperwork, doctor. I just got in with some of the local doctors. And the drug addicts that come to me, I send them to the local doctors where they're treated with chelation therapy and vitamin drips and foot detox and ozone and all of these things to make the addict healthier. And then we treat the addict with the ibogaine, which is that plant that resets does a physical reset to the person's brain back to the pre-addictive state, which ends the craving for any drug and actually, quote unquote, cures the addiction, but it doesn't cure the trauma that causes the addiction. So it's easy. It's not hard to do. Now, I can't tell you where, but we are opening a second store in Asia in 2 months. And I can't wait to announce that in a couple of months, but I promised not to on this show, so I'm not. So I'm going to learn what that's like. I think there in Asia, it's going to be a little different. I think there's going to be some paperwork for us to fill out.
Are you going to leave Mexico to do that, or are you just satelliting that out to someone?
I will fly back and forth.
Gotcha. Because I still want to come down there and like hang out for a month or two, and you need to be around.
Man, you
I
got to, bro.
I want to. I want to. I've been talking about expatting forever. I just haven't looked anywhere because I didn't know how much the ticket. Am I going to spend like $1,000 trying to get down there? You know.
Yeah, Barry, pimp Puerto Vallarta for us. Other than if you leave the cartels alone, they won't kill you. You know, it's you know, what's it like? I mean,
he said it feels safe because of that. And I get it. I get it.
Yeah,
you know who the bad guy is.
I was.
They don't have to worry about me as long as they leave me alone. I'm good. You know, we can get along.
Well, it's because of them is why it's so safe here. You know, I was in Puerto Vallarta after my divorce for a year. You know, I was single, and I did all of the things a single man does when he gets a divorce. But I kind of went the other way. I quit all drugs. I started working out. I quit drinking because I knew I had to feel the pain of that divorce. Because if I didn't allow myself to feel that pain, you know, 10 years later in my second marriage, I might smack my wife and wonder where it came from. And it came from pain I didn't deal with in the past. Well, what I'm trying to say is, Doctor and
Ernie.
And Ernie, I'm sorry, Mr. Ernie.
No, please call me Ernie. Call me Mr. Hancock.
I didn't know it was Ernest or Ernie or Mr. Hancock. So But I was walking around and I'm like, whoa, what? I thought I quit doing drugs. What drug am I on? It sort of felt like I was on mushrooms, because mushrooms always make me silly and giggly. And it's very nonviolent type thing. I hadn't taken a drug, and I realized what I was feeling was safety. It's the first time I ever felt safe in my life. I grew up in some of the roughest neighborhoods, some of the roughest environments in the world in Texas. Texas is rougher than the Amazon jungles in Brazil, almost as rough as Venezuela. I mean, I grew up around some of the toughest men in the world, and I didn't know what it was like to feel safe. You know, then I was a drug cop, and then I busted cops, and I started getting raided and arrested. So I was diagnosed with severe PTSD. I walk around on my cell phone without looking around, it just in white mode, and I'm not worried about a homeless person jumping out and grabbing me, or a thief or anything like that. So my life, it would be, right now that I've been through all the tragedy and traumas and that's behind me, my life would be considered that of a king, in my opinion, a king, and I feel like I'm in heaven.
Well, tell me about the climate. Tell me about the weather, the temperature, you know, the storms, the, you know, transportation, schools. I mean, you're selling it, man. I mean, come on, you know, help me out here.
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, the transportation, I don't have a car. Haven't had one in 6 years. And when I did have my 2 cars in the U.S., I didn't drive anyway. I'd quit driving. It's, for stoners, driving just gets in the way. But so I take taxis and buses and walk and jog everywhere. There's not anywhere in Puerto Vallarta that I can't get to for less than $5. You know, 100 peso taxi ride. So it's cheaper to not have a car and spend gas and oil and insurance and look for parking. It's cheaper to taxis. Some of the best food in the world. And I'm probably under exaggerating a lot of this, because I don't want to sound like I'm selling Mexico, because I'm caught. I don't want a bunch of gringos pouring in here and screwing this place up.
Fair enough.
But I want them to feel the freedom that I feel. There's some of the best food in the world. Almost every restaurant here, whether it's a taco stand or coat and tie, is 5-star food, 5-star dining. The nightclubs here are comparable to the nightclubs back in the 80s in Miami. We're talking 1,000 people in there jumping and having a fabulous time with the best light shows and DJs on the planet. We're talking a city that to my back are the Sierra Madre Mountains, and to my front is the ocean, the bay. So you can walk from jungle to ocean. In fact, they filmed the movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh, Predator.
Schwarzenegger.
Is it Predator? It looks like Predator there in the background.
That's how beautiful the jungles are here. As I said, a rental, a 1-bedroom condo is about $400-$450 a month. We're talking clean, air-conditioned, and fully furnished. That means forks, knives, spoons, everything you need to live. This 5-star food that I speak of, for $10 to $12 a plate, a person can enjoy a really nice New York-style cooked steak, and it's a large enough piece to take enough home for a second meal, and all the trimmings you could imagine. So
for how much?
So for $10 to $12. A normal meal, say hamburger or fresh tacos, would be $4 to $5, all you could eat.
Well,
so it doesn't take a lot to live.
Now, what about the weather?
The weather would be similar to San Diego, California. We're at 70 to 80 degrees 7 to 8 months out of the year. 3 to 4 months out of the year, which is a low season that we just came out of, is hot, humid, and rains every day. Every afternoon it rains. So for 3 months, hot and humid like East Texas, and rain every afternoon. And mosquitoes. So I'm not crazy about that 3 months.
That's when you go to Asia.
And trade for that, the rest of the time the weather is absolutely beautiful. Shorts, flip-flops, and swimming.
Barry, say like I like to grow my own food. I kind of want a little space. I don't want to live in an apartment. Could I get a farm there, or would I have to worry about like building a life there? Is it too unstable that, in 5 years the farm's gone?
No, you build a life here, man. I'd build a life here quicker than I would the U.S.
Well, I mean, when you're looking at you get 10 acres, you're going to do a little something, you're having some fun, and I'm going, okay, is there somebody, hey, the gringo over there looks like he's got some toys I want. I mean, how much security I got to have?
He said about the cartel.
No, nothing like that at all.
Yeah.
Protect you if anybody comes on your 10 acres to take one of your toys and you call the police, they take that very serious, and ears are on the ground. All the taxis owned by the cartels, everybody is cartel basically here. So they're going to tell who took your four-wheeler, and they're going to get your four-wheeler back.
So I'm going to, do I need to, like kiss somebody's ring when I get there? Hey man, I'm here for leave me alone.
Yeah, do I basically have to adjust every cartel guy for free? I mean, what happens?
Not at all.
There's constantly patience.
Unlike our politicians who boast their positions to gain favor, the government officials here look like you and I and an everyday person. You'll never know who you're talking to. You'll meet them every day.
I might need to come visit.
All right, Ernie, set it up. I'm coming.
Hey, listen, I can live anywhere I want. All I need is a computer. I'm a digital nomad. So there's a reason I've stayed here for 3 years. I'll tell you what, though, Asia's looking pretty nice, like Philippines and places like that. Those are becoming hot expat spots. Colombia, where that young man's from, Colombia is one of the safest places to live in the world right now.
Yeah, he's bored.
Changed. Yeah, that's what it is. I think all of us are like, let's go for 5 years and then get bored. Now,
this is what I had Doug Barry. I don't think you heard. I had Doug Casey on yesterday, and he's coming back on the show in like February, March, because he's going to the Solomon Islands, where I think that's Guam. He's going to the Solomon Islands. It has 800-900 islands, and he's going to take them public and do an IPO on freaking the Solomon Islands.
Damn, well, if anybody can do it, it'd be Mr. Casey.
Because he wants to. So, I mean, I'm like, Gary, you need to go check it out and report.
I will, man. I'll give it a try. And by the way,
I want my island.
You had invited me on your show, and I was a no-show. I sincerely apologize for that, and I would like a re-invitation.
No, I know why, because it was freaking early.
That I was
you get Barry's lazy ass up.
Well, something be said for
now
that.
that you're all clean, man, you can come on now?
You know me too well. You just know me too well.
I knew what was going on.
I want to take a minute, guys.
One of the hardest times
sorry, go ahead.
of my life at that time. Actually, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Doc.
No, go ahead, Barry.
Yeah, it's fine. We'll get you on.
Well, we have our last guest joining us today, which is Case Parks. Case Park, last time we talked to you, he was in Mexico as an expat, and now he has jumped ship and drove down to Nicaragua. And tell us a story a little bit about expatting there. Case, if you're there, go ahead and unmute. And I don't know if you can do video or not. If you can, try to, but if not, it's okay. Case, you there? He does have Nicaraguan internet, so let's see.
Yeah, that's another thing, Barry. The communication. What kind of bandwidth we looking at? Connectivity and such.
I'm working on right now. I'm working off 10 megs, which is not fast enough for me. I've got ADD, and I've always been able to think faster than a computer. I especially think faster than the internet here. And now that stated, There's a large community opening in Guadalajara, which when the highway's finished will only be a 2-hour drive. My daughter and my son-in-law, who are the webmasters for Anarchapulco and Dollar Vigilante, and they're my webmasters and a couple others. They moved to Guadalajara to get the 100 meg internet. They've got a big digital nomad community there. I would like to see Vallarta get faster internet, and it's coming because Vallarta is growing. Expat to Mexico is, I think, now winning over Mexicans going into the U.S. I think there are more Americans coming to Mexico now.
And what's the attitude about that? Do they care? The people like, cool, come on in, man.
They want us here. No, the Mexican people here invite us with open arms. The only time you'll get what we call the Mexican shrug, and that's where they don't pay attention to you, is hurry and push them. They do not, their culture does not, they have no concept of being hurried and pushed. For instance, in the United States, I walk into a hardware store, I open the hardware store door and I go, I need 3 wrenches and 2 screwdrivers. If you walk in a store here in Mexico and do that, they'll help the other customer behind you. They like a Buenas tardes. How's your family? Oh, sí, bien. Okay, yeah. All right. Oh, by the way, I'm looking for a screwdriver.
Right. And do you find yourself get the gringo price everywhere, or do people kind of know you in the community and start to treat you like I'm local Mexican?
I'm very popular here, so I get Mexican prices if I want them. I do not pay the top gringo tax, but I do tip a lot and give a lot to these people because they've protected me. Mexico feels like my mother, and they're very sweet, cultured people. What was your question?
Just about if you get different prices, and like when I went to Mexico, my experience was they just and I don't blame them. I mean, you're a tourist; they're never going to see you again in their life. They go for as much money as they can in one sale, and I get that. That's pretty much every country does that. But I'm wondering when you live there if you're always going to get the gringo price, because like I lived in India for a short time, and I always had the white guy price. I could never get the Indian price,
Yeah, eventually you get the Mexican price. For instance, an ounce bag of cannabis is 200 pesos. So that's about $10. Mexican price. Gringo price is about 1,000 to 2,000 pesos. So you're looking at $50 to $100. Now there is nothing, that's not ripping gringos off either. Like, now a taco may cost a gringo would be $1.50. For me, it's 15 pesos. So the gringo would think, oh, they ripped me off. Charging more, if you agree to a price, if a vendor gives you a price and you agree to it and you pay it and you take the product, you're not being ripped off. You just agree to a higher price.
Because I've been to, Mexico several times and gone through this, and we went. It's a long story. Bottom line was we went and got a bunch of tacos and went back to the family with it. They asked us how much we paid. She got all pissed off, went down and made them refund a bunch of the money, And I'm like, I thought I got off really good, man. I don't know what the deal is. So if I went up and I, let's say it's $1 for locals and $10, for expats or tourists. And I just went, I said, hey, man, I want all this. I'll give you $5. Do they feel, slighted?
No, they don't. And in fact, like the taxis, I know what taxis charge. So I don't even ask them when they let me out of the taxi. I just go cincuenta, which means 50 pesos. And I give them 50 pesos, usually a 20 to 40 peso tip. Or 100, here's 100 pesos. I know what the prices are supposed to be. So once you know what the prices are supposed to be, that's the money you hand them. If you don't know the prices and say how much, of course, they're going to give a higher price. And you have the freedom to ask for a lower price, to barter. That's normal for them. But for me, you know, if we're talking about 10 pesos, which is 10 cents to me,
Yeah.
and a dollar, $2 to them. Come on, let them have the 10 pesos. We make more money than they do, so we
and it
deserve to be
probably
taxed.
builds goodwill if you drop like, you know, 100 peso tip or something. I would think the extra dollar's worth just the good karma and the goodwill to drop. You know?
Exactly, man. Tips speak a lot around here, and not just because of the money in their pocket, but they feel embarrassed if you don't tip them because they feel they may have done something wrong. They didn't serve you properly. So a tip is not only monetary reward, but it's also it's a sign of appreciation and pride in the work that they've done for you.
Is there too much? You know, sometimes, you know, I think people would consider me an over tipper, but that's just karma thing, you know. But if they don't give me great service, you get 15%, man. I mean, I won't stiff you, but man, you're not getting, you know, that I felt like I got loved on. So, you know, if I'm, you know, the rich gringo that gives, you know, quite a bit extra, it's cien for everything, you know, do they feel like stupid gringo, you know, and they like you're just dumb? Do they lose respect for you, or are they, you know, feeling that, you know, I'm just wondering in the culture how you can be generous without being an idiot.
Well, that's a good point. And Mexicans are very perceptive people. So they'll perceive that you're not just a weak run over because you're a big tipper. I'm also a big tipper. A while ago when I said 50 peso taxi and I dipped 20 to 30 pesos, I really will give 50 pesos for the ride and 50 peso tip. I'll tip double my tab sometimes down here. But if they didn't put any tequila in my drink and they're charging me for that, and I drink that with a smile and give them a big tip, well, you don't want to be a pushover anywhere in the world. So you just say, hey, come on, man, more tequila. And they'll actually bring the bottle out and start until you say stop. So there are ways to where you don't look like a pushover guy and still give to the people who deserve the extra tip.
Well, has their culture been sullied? I mean, have they retained? Because my experience with having a restaurant and Mexican employees and so on, I had a lot of respect for my Hispanic employees. They were the hardworking ones that went to America to work, to get a job. And all this stuff they try and say, Mexicans, they're taking the entitlement. I'm going, that's all bullshit from my experience. So when I go to Mexico, did all the good people leave? You know, or is that culture there and they're, you know, good human beings? Is government, you know, socialized them to the point that they're messed up in the head? Do they even understand your anarcho-capitalist philosophy? Are they supportive of it? I mean, what are you dealing with philosophically?
Mexicans hate government more than the U.S.
Awesome.
You'd be surprised. The police will not come in your. That's why they don't have raids in your homes here. Police will not come in your house. I'm not kidding you. I saw a couple Canadians that stayed drunk the whole summer on their terrace, beating the hell out of each other, husband and wife, in slap-down fights. And all the other gringos would get upset and start calling the police, and the police would pull up to the gate, and the gate was locked, and holler at them to open it, and they'd go no, and the police would just drive away. In the U.S., they'd be kicking down doors and everything to protect the woman, or in this case, protect the man. This woman was beating the hell out of her husband. But so they do not like government intervention here. Something you'll notice about the Mexicans here too, you will not find one that is not well groomed. You will not find one that does not have nice clothes on. Even the homeless people here are well groomed, and there's very few homeless. They're very well taken care of. They're not socialized like you think with all these government handouts. These people are hustlers, man. They're on the beach trying to sell cigars, trying to sell jewelry. They will clean your house spotless and won't steal a thing. I'm not saying there are not thieves in Mexico. There are. But compared to where I lived in the United States most of my life, the people here have the moral high ground above my countrymen in terms of goodness as persons, their character, their demeanor. The only loud people are us. There's not anybody loud here in Mexico. If you see a Mexican running or if you hear a Mexican getting loud, they're either having a party or something bad's wrong. When you hear yelling around here, it's always a gringo. It's an expat or it's a tourist.
I have a questions coming in. I've kind of ignored the chat, and you've had some questions come in for Barry. So, Barry, Pat wants to know: is it safe for a single woman to live down there, or? And well, we'll start with that question. Is it? There's a lot of single women that are divorced, want to retire, move, start over. What's it like down there for them?
I recommend it 100%. I can't say enough good about it. Now, I'm talking particularly Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. This place is called the San Francisco of Mexico. It's one entire end of the city is owned by very wealthy the gay community. So, you know, anywhere that gays are allowed, people like me are allowed, and equality seems to be much better. My women's safety is very important to me. Of course, I love women. My mom's a woman. All my wives were women, and that I love dearly. My daughters are women.
It's usually how it works.
And yeah, and I would not recommend them to walk around in Austin, Texas at 2 or 3 o'clock a.m. But here in Puerto Vallarta, I don't care what time, 24/7, they can walk wherever they want and they'll be safe. If they fall down, there'll be a Mexican running over there to help pick them up, to make sure their knees aren't banged up, or to see if they need to go to the Red Cross. It's that particular about safety here. So if there's any single women looking for somewhere safe, you know, I've learned a lot. Mostly I've learned the stuff I learned before wasn't true.
Yeah.
But it's a big issue for women. Safety and security is. You know, when I became single again 3 years ago in my adult life, the hurdle I had to overcome was making a woman feel safe to date me or any guy. They need security. So security is a big issue for single women, and that's a good question, and it's here. The nice thing about being a single woman or a single man here too is we have a lot of expats and tourists. Well, if you're a tourist, you've got a little bit of money. You could pay a plane ticket, or you could buy a cruise ship, and have a lot of single people coming here who have money, and it's very easy to hook up. It's not hard to, you know, find a date.
Very good.
Well, tell me about
wait,
healthcare.
Ernie, I got to jump in for a sec because we finally got Case. He came back. Case, can you unmute and see if you can get in?
Hey, what's up?
Hey, it works from Nicaragua.
Oh my God! No, actually, it's not Nicaragua.
Oh.
It's Guatemala.
Oh, I thought it was Nicaragua. That's right, Guatemala.
No.
You're right. I'm sorry. I don't know why I mixed that up.
Countries
I keep
away.
mixing up everying with you. I'm sorry about that.
That's
I watched
cool.
your video. It was pretty. That was a heck of a trip you got to take down there. But for people that don't know you, Case, could you tell everybody who you are, what you do, and then talk about you live kind of a expat lifestyle now, where you're just kind of roaming around from Mexico to other countries, and catch us up a little bit about you.
So if you want to know anything about what I do, just go to my site, everydaymasters.life. It's too complicated to get into right now, but we've been traveling. Me and my wife, we've been with our 3 kids and 2 dogs. We've been traveling through Mexico and Belize and Guatemala for the past 2 years. And so I was watching a little bit of the show, and Barry was talking about how you have to get out of the country every 6 months. And so that's what we've been doing. You know, we moved down to Mexico, to the Yucatan, which, I don't know, the Yucatan's kind of like Texas. You know, Texas doesn't really consider themselves part of America. And the Yucatan, it's just an incredible little state in Mexico. I saw this study that, you know how they always do studies, you know, which country's the happiest, you know, which is the most peaceful. The Yucatan, if the Yucatan was a country, it would be rated the #2 most peaceful country in the world. So it's a special little place. I was briefly listening to the show on my dial-up connection, but it's everything that they were saying. That's exactly the case. I mean, people are amazingly friendly. It's just a nice change of pace. I didn't really think we'd still be down here. I wanted to take a year off and just kind of get away from America. And after the first year, I realized that I really don't want to go back. So we signed up for another year. And I don't know, it seems like the longer you stay away, the less reason you have to go back.
How old are your children?
My children are 11, 9, and 6. And so even when we were in America, we were homeschooling our kids anyway. So, and I kind of, you know, when we were living in Colorado, you know, I kind of lived in my own little bubble world anyway. So we just kind of took our little bubble world down here. And, you know, what was amazing is I remember when we were first leaving, and, you know, we were having a little get together with all our close friends. And, you know, I remember saying, you know, I'm really going to miss these conversations. You know what I mean? Because I don't speak Spanish. And I knew that, you know, no matter how much Spanish I learn, I'm never going to be able to have, like, excuse me, you know, deep conversations about life. You know, so and that's what I like to talk about. And so I was thinking, you know, man, I'm going to miss these conversations. And then the second that those words left my mouth, I realized, wait a second, man, when I get down there, I will draw to me the exact people that I'm on the same frequency with. And I'll be damned if we didn't come down here and within like 1 month, we had met 3 different couples that are just like as good of friends as I've ever had in my life. And, you know, I don't really have much time for more than a few friends. So
what city are you in? I want to look it up on a map. What city are you?
Right now we're in Santiago, at Lake Atitlan in Guatemala. It's this amazing lake in between these 3 volcanoes, and it is breathtaking. And in Mexico, we live in Celestun, Selestun, and we've lived there for a year. And you know what's kind of weird is in Celestun and basically in the Yucatan, the people that we've met, like 95% of them are from Canada. You almost never meet anybody from America, at least who I've met. But down here, it's like 95% of the people that I meet are from the USA. So I think that's kind of interesting. But I'm not sure why people aren't coming down and just wagons to get down to the Yucatan, because it is amazingly beautiful. It's incredibly inexpensive. And I think with the Yucatan that I've heard, and it kind of makes sense, is that all the drug cartel, it's like, this is like where their families are. So it's kind of like an unwritten law that, like, okay, nobody messes with the Yucatan. And what I've found is they really they treat the gringos pretty good. I mean, I think that they, you know, the tourists, they see us as you know, really good for their economy, and we never get messed with ever. It's been amazing.
Now, are you making a living pretty much off YouTube and your website and what you do with the remote healings and stuff? Do you make a living enough to pay for this? Like, or are you picking up odd jobs along the way?
No, I don't pick up odd jobs. I don't make enough off my healing work to cover the bills, but before I have to come back to America, I will be able to do that. So I'm in like a transition period. You know what I mean? I just saved my money, and actually I'd saved my money, and I was going to buy a house in America. I was going to buy my dream house that we had rented for 8 years. And the banks wouldn't give me a loan for the house that I had been paying the mortgage on for 8 years. And so right when that happened, I was done with America. I was just like, I'm done with this shit. I you know, both me and my wife, we were just like, okay, let's go. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because if I would have bought that overpriced house, I would have just been slaving to that mortgage just forever. And I have never felt more free in my life. And I did hear Barry talking about, you know, the house he's living in. Oh man, it's insane. We live in a house in Celestine that costs, you can buy it for about $300,000. And in America, it's like a $6 million house. I mean, we are on the beach. It's like 3,500 square feet. We have a fenced in like acre. If you ever watch any of my videos on Everyday Masters, you'll see it. It's ridiculous.
It's amazing.
We pay $800 a month, and that includes electric, gas, internet, cable TV. And it's fully furnished, you know, just like Barry was saying. In fact, most of the places are fully furnished. And this place in Guatemala that I'm in now, this place is amazing. And it's also $800. And $800 is very high for where we're at.
Barry, do you have something you want to say on that? I'm sorry, I saw you shaking your head.
Oh, no, I was agreeing with him. Everything he's saying mirrors my experience.
You know, I thought you guys would get along good. I wanted to put you two together because Case I don't know the actual catalyst that made you decide to finally just pull the trigger and leave. Tell us a little for somebody who's listening now, I don't have enough courage to just pull the trigger and go. I'm like, what am I going to do with my cat? What am I going to do with, you know, my garden? What am I going to do with, you know, I add the what am I going to do's. So how do you get past that?
I don't know. You just quit jerking off and thinking about every possible bad thing that could happen. And you just decide what you want and you just do it. I mean, I have 3 kids. Now I have 3 dogs, because if you move down here with dogs, you just end up getting another dog, because that's just the way it is. But I mean, I could have thought of thousands of reasons to not pull the plug. I mean, not to pull the, you know what I mean? And I don't know. I just kind of knew that, you know, everything always works out in my life, and you know, it was my highest excitement. And you know, we've talked before. I've quit rationalizing my dreams to death. You know what I mean? I just go with my instinct and trust that everything's going to work out, and it always does. So, you know, why quit trusting it?
Well, my biggest anchor, I wouldn't call it an anchor, but I mean, you know, my biggest pleasure comes from my family and my grandchildren. So I'm just wondering, you know, I go down to Puerto Vallarta, I go to Yucatan, I go anywhere. Mexico, I speak a little bit of Spanish, so it wouldn't be that big a, you know, hurdle for me. But you know, grandkids coming back and forth and doing, and maybe you want to build a place for them to come, but you got to think 10, 15 years into the future. So I'm wondering, you could rent and get a nice place and so on, but what are the laws like for me to kind of plop down and I got, you know, 10 acres to leave me aloneism and, you know, be there for the kids come visit Christmas kind of thing?
There's people that do it all the time. I mean, if you're looking at farmland, you talk about cheap. I mean, my God, you could probably buy, I don't know, 20 acres with a house on it for like, I don't know, 15 grand, 20 grand.
Yeah. Wow.
But if you're going to be like, you know, if you're going to be like one of the major cities, which would be Merida in the Yucatan, or if you want to buy by the beach, you know, you're not going to be able to buy 20 acres or whatever.
Right.
But it's you know, just but
I mean, you
do it all the time.
I mean, well, we've had friends that buy land in Mexico. Rocky Point is, you know, close by, you know, Penasco and all that stuff. And Mexico had some kind of an inherited ability for family members to take on public notary positions so that you could transfer land. And it's just kind of this corrupt pay somebody do kind of, I mean, it's a thing. And then do you have to have somebody that of Mexican descent that would actually take the title? That then you, I mean, there are issues. And I'm just wondering if a expat coming in, I came here to buy land. Well, you're already screwed because they know you want to get land. So I'm just wondering You know, that actual process of an expat owning land in Mexico, what the process is.
From all the people that I know that have bought property, they don't buy the property in their name. They start a corporation and then they buy the property under that corporation. And that seems to be like the rule. And so I really don't know the exact laws, but I mean, if say you had, I've heard 99-year lease or something like that. I mean, it's so inexpensive to live down here. You could literally live down here for 10 years and, I mean,
save your money.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I don't know. I'm just not really in that position to think about things like that. My family is with me, and I do understand that, you want to see your grandkids. So that's just some different.
Well, can I let me chime in?
Jump in.
That may help a little bit. One of my strategies as a drug expert witness, and I'm recognized as a drug expert witness in all 50 states, federal and state court. And one of my strategies now, for instance, a young Texas man working in the oil field in Colorado fell asleep on the side of the road, and Colorado Highway Patrol pulls him out of his car, and they take him to the hospital and blood test him, and he had THC in his blood. So he caught a DUID, driving while under the influence of a drug, and he wasn't even driving. Well, the strategy there, I made some phone calls, and I learned it's not extraditable. The kid hated living in Colorado. He didn't want to live there anymore. His job would transfer him back to Texas. So I told him, get to Texas. And as long as he doesn't go in Colorado, they won't arrest him for a warrant. They won't extradite outside of Colorado. So he basically fled Colorado, and as long as he stays out of their reach, he won't go to jail. He won't have to worry and face that crazy charge and ruin the rest of his life. Well, the same holds true to fleeing the United States. I mean, Mr. Ernest, you could start a farm in the U.S. and it'd be really hard to start one for $15,000. Let's say you buy 50 acres down here for $15,000 and put a nice little house on it for your grandkids and them to come in and see you. If a war and craziness does break out and they start land grabbing and they take your property, you haven't lost much. Now, you did lose some years of work, but you really haven't lost much. And furthermore, in terms of seeing your grandkids and seeing your kids, again, part of my strategy is sometimes I don't help people leave the United States if they have a warrant, but I explain to them that Mexico will not extradite them for certain, like, tax crimes and even certain drug warrants if you're not a big drug cartel. So they flee the United States and come to Mexico to live, and their fear is exactly what you brought up, and that is, how do I see my kids? How do I see my family? I'm living in Mexico. I tell them, well, you have two choices. Your kids and family and all of them can see you in prison and visit you once a month. Or they can get on an airplane in almost any major airport, national airport in the United States, hop on that airplane at 8 in the morning, and by noon, they could be having margaritas with you on the beach because it's only a 3.5-hour flight, and the tickets are between $500 and $700 round trip. So a lot of people have grandkids and families spread across. And if you calculate it, some people have their grown kids and grandkids that live 2 miles from them, but they only see each other 4 times a year.
You know, this is a situation for both of you. I give you an example of what's happening. Today we have a Christmas party that we do every year, and we have. Well, this year everybody's been so concerned about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, and you've been saying, Ernie, and I know you told us and we should have, and sorry, and kind of what we do. So from 3 to 6 p.m. before the party, we're doing Bitcoin, crypto, bring your learn kind of trade, go and take care of your business. Well, a lot of people that we know in various, because I've been covering this since like 09, 10. So every new currency that comes out, every new crypto, all these guys now, they're filthy, stinking crypto rich. And they go, I want to buy land. What are we going to do? Well, Donald's a real estate agent. They're interested in getting in the desert out here. We'll go, be in Leave Me Alone-ismville or whatever, and we'll go do whatever. And we're looking at land. There's a lot of opportunities here. But I'm just like, I really uncomfortable with screw them. They're going to tell you what you can and can't and how and what and who gets a cut. And it bothers the crap out of me. If I do something in Mexico in either Yucatan or Puerto or wherever, I mean, I'm familiar with a lot of different places. But the thing is, one, I'd like to be near the water, beach. I scuba dive, and that's just a thing for me, okay? So if I can get that, score. The problem is that when I go down, oops, sorry. When I go... I don't know who that is.
That's you, Ernie. Whoa. Ernie, let me mute you out.
Radio.
Ernie, mute out. All right, let me.
I'll call back in.
Ernie, they don't want you to deliver your question.
Wow.
Hey, Case, sorry about that.
Yeah, see, that's cool.
Okay, how's that? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah, just don't move your arms like this. I think that's what caused it.
No,
I got the man. Anyway, so these people that have these resources, either of you use a consultant, or can you be a consultant, or because they're going, hey man, we're doing like build the ship. I got my own pirate ship, man. I'm gonna fly. I mean, what the hell? Like when I did Narcopoca, I think Barry saw my presentation. We're already go to piratswithoutborders.com, and you'll see. I'm like, fight me, man. I'm in space now. What? Freedom's only 62 miles up. And we're out of sovereign. Suck it. So, internet Wi-Fi is coming with the satellite communication. These different meshes. There are several. Within 2 to 3 years, I think it's going to be up to gig up and down, 20 millisecond, because it's going to be low Earth orbit. It's going to be the fastest of everybody can bite it. So then that opens up the planet for what I do. Then you have energy that, with battery technology and solar, that's not really a big problem anymore. So I'm like, I'm looking, the world is my oyster, but where? Can you guys, this is a great show that Taryn put together for the expat, mindset, but we have a lot of the self-made people. They, bought crypto at the right time. They got the right philosophy, and they're looking for a place to start a home without having some kind of delusion that United States of America is going to defend their rights of whatever. Barry, you've got perfect example. Hell, you were a drug cop. So this is, I'm looking as we do the show and I talk to these people, the more and more I look, we may get a place here in Arizona because I'd like to have, your family and so on, but I am not averse to taking a couple of Bitcoin and freaking going somewhere else and they can suck it. So I'm just,
Exactly.
help me, man.
Do not advise your people. My advice would be absolutely do not sink your well-deserved crypto earnings in real estate in the U.S. unless you're trying to trade that real estate to make money. But to set up a life for yourself, in comparison, the United States freedom level is a big zero, below zero, compared to Mexico, Colombia, Guatemala, Asia, especially Philippines and places like that. There's no way I would restart a life in the United States. I love my countrymen, but come on, y'all. You can't even ride in back of a pickup truck there without going to jail. It's against the law to ride in the back of a pickup. You can't gather rainwater there, y'all.
Yeah.
Where I live, there will be 5 people, a full family, driving around on a moped. 3 or 4 of them won't have any shoes on, and there isn't a helmet in that town. If you wore a helmet in that town, there are very few rules. Very few rules where I am in Celestine. It's pretty loose, and I love it. There's been a couple of times where we were pulled over, and I was pulled over for a reason. I didn't have my seatbelt on. I'm not big on seatbelts, but one of the times, the guy pulled me over, and you know, obviously I don't speak Spanish. My wife and my kids are fluent in Spanish, but I don't. So I just played the, I don't know what you're talking about. And I could tell he wanted, you know, he wanted a bribe. And so the funny thing was that I literally didn't have any money. I just had some change that you'd like tip the people that, you know, bag your groceries and stuff. And so he's looking at me. And so I go, man, I don't have any money. And I pulled out this little bag. And he's like, yeah. So he lifted up the piece of paper and I put it underneath the piece of paper. And it was probably like, I don't know, like 75 pesos or something, which is like, I don't know, like less than $4. And he had a big smile. And I knew that 75 pesos, he was going to go buy some food with that, or he's going to go buy, you know, like, I don't know. I feel so much better in a place where you can just like bribe your way out of a $140 seatbelt ticket for like $4. And you know, that $4 that I gave him that's going into his, you know, that's going to his family. You know what I mean? Instead of writing the ticket out and it just goes to all this bullshit.
Yeah, it's better than a homeless guy begging for it. You know, well, this is one thing. I was in Panama, and the big campaign was they were going to do away with corruption. You know, no more bribing cops and and all the expats that are down there, and they going, no, we'd rather have the, you know, just pay them and we're done. You know, that works a lot better. So is there a big political campaign to do away with this kind of corruption, or is that just a better way of doing it?
I've never heard of one, but
no,
I don't really pay attention.
The Mexicans, let me chime in, the Mexicans are going to run it like the Mexicans want to run it. Don't think for a second that Mexicans aren't men and they're not women, and they're very strong, culturally strong men and women. And they may put out some propaganda that we're going to stop this, what everybody calls bribes, but that doesn't stop. You know, you do understand that marijuana, LSD, heroin, amphetamines are all decriminalized in Mexico. They're decriminalized. Really? Yes, sir. Under a gram, federal level, you're only supposed to get a ticket and turn you loose. And if you get 2, 3, 4 of those, they want to send you to some kind of rehab. Well, that's what the law says. But the Mexicans who run it say, no, I caught you smoking weed on the beach. And, you know, that's one of our rules. We don't want you doing drugs out in public. You can do all the drugs you want in your house, and we won't raid you. So pay us some money. People call it a bribe. I call it a roadside tax.
How are the taxes there? You guys hit?
I don't pay tax, and I'm not sure if that's right or not. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do about all that. Whoops, I just told on myself.
That's fabulous.
You didn't check the blue pages for the Department of You Owe Money?
Fabulous. So funny.
Well, you know, I remember coming from Acapulco a couple of years ago was Danny Sessoms was going, they drove from Austin. They went down in the van and they were going back a couple of years ago, and they're telling the story that a few hundred yards before the border, they were stopped and they had the checkpoint of the boys were standing there, and they were just, you know, and they didn't speak. They didn't know what the hell was going on until finally they realized they had an eyeball on all their pesos that were in the console. And all they had to do is just give them money, and then they, oh, okay. And they didn't, I don't think they had passports. So when they get to the border, they're going out, oh no, they stole our they stole all our ID back here. And they go, yeah, happens all the time. Welcome back. I mean, you know, so if you go with the right attitude and you understand the culture and what kind of a non-insulting or stupid amount is, do you feel freer when you got a badge and a gun in front of you? And they're, got you, you know, and you go, all right, this is my, you know, freedom tax of I'm not in America anymore. I mean, how do you look at it? What's your mindset when you're going through these transactions?
My mindset used to be, for one, the police drive around here with their red and blue lights on so they can be seen. And it took me a couple years to get used to that, man. My heart would jump. And now I literally don't pay attention to police here now, because I know they're not after me. They're not going to stop and search me like the American cops did 100 times. They're not going to put me in jail like they did 9 times. My total arrest record, 9 times they put me in a cage. And I may have tattoos and I'm 6'2" and I can street fight, Well, I'm a very sensitive, nice guy, and you should not feel safe putting me in a cage. I mean, it makes me cry. It's trauma. But here, the police, I don't even pay attention to them because I know they're not looking for me. They're out looking to keep the city safe, and they mean that. They know what to look
100%.
for. Yeah, they know what to look for if it's another cartel gang member that may be coming in causing some trouble, or if they hear word that there may be a group of them coming in. Man, they move the machine guns in. They've got marked police cars here with 50 caliber machine guns mounted to them, and they'll have 4 or 5 soldiers in the back of those, and they may have 10 of those surrounding one block that they got a word that another cartel may be going to cause some problems. So they move forces in real quick, and that show of force keeps the other cartels from moving in and causing any problems here.
Case, I wanted to ask Case, you said your family speaks fluent Spanish. Your wife, does she speak, is she Mexican, Hispanic, or she just learned it? I mean, and this, what Barry was describing of all of these interactions that you may or may not have with police, how do you feel your security with your family? I mean,
oh God, I feel so safe. It's crazy. I mean, and that's another thing is when you're down here, this is a very family-oriented, culture, and I would say that we are accepted with even wider arms because we have our family. I mean, people like this is different. I mean, and when I'm walking around and I see police officers, man, I know that they're going to protect me. I mean, there's just, and the only thing a police officer ever says to me is, "Buenas tardes," that's it. And it's like they smile. It's really, it's exactly the opposite of everything that you hear on the news in America. Now, am I going to move to Mexico City and live in a really bad neighborhood with my kids? No. You know what I mean? Am I going to move to Detroit? No. I mean, so it's...
No, here in America, every single itty-bitty small town, certainly Barry Cooper, attests to this, has got this militarized mindset of we kick your ass when we went through the academy of, down on the ground MFer, man. And I'm going, there the culture is different because why? What has happened here in America to the local law enforcement that's now part of the Fusion Center or whatever? I got to tell this. Mark Victor, right, Barry?
Dear friend of mine.
One of his best friends, that's a good friend, is a sergeant with the Phoenix Police Department. Well, he's a liaison to the Fusion Center guys, right? So I'm good. One time he gives me his card and it says, at FBI.gov. And I'm like, what the hell is that? He goes, we're just one big happy family. Okay. So I'm like, holy shit. So I need from your perspective, you have family, and Case has got his family down there. What is the genesis of the difference between a local law enforcement here and there? Why the difference? What is the seed that caused that here in America?
I have a twisted interpretation about that, but I don't know. It always seemed like the police back in they were like the stars in high school that when they got out of high school they lost their fame, and they were drawn into that power position so they could keep that kind of, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of police in America. Well, go ahead.
I think it's a violence issue and a use of force issue. Like Casey's mentioned, he knows the police are going to protect him here, but in the U.S., you're worried they're going to grab you. Well, it's the culture. By the way, Mark Victor is a dear friend of mine. He visited Puerto Vallarta. He brought a cruise ship full of his son's graduating class. So there were like 20 graduated seniors on the beach, and we partied and had a good time. Mark Victor is a hell of a good human being.
Yeah, we were just at a Bill of Rights event last night where we both, read the amendments, and he was between two judges, up there, they had two others, and he goes, hey man, this is all bullshit. He's gonna go, well, I'm glad Mark broke the silence here, because let me tell you what I found out. I thought I picked the Third Amendment, quartering troops, because there wasn't that many violations. I did some studying on it, and I'm like, holy shit, the U.S. all 10 of them are screwed, man. We're done, you know. So it was interesting. You would have been proud of them.
There's some questions, guys, coming in that I wanna throw out at you. One of my Patreons, Jeremy, he is saying, I just wonder which places would be more off limits to us Americans, as I'm sure some people resent Americans because, you know, the crazy foreign policy, starting all the wars, pissing off the rest of the world. Give me an idea, like, how much reverb do you get from that where you're at? Are people like, what the hell's your government doing, you know?
Well, abroad, people laugh at the U.S. The United States is a laughing stock, and I hate to say that because I love my people that are there. But even the Mexicans that cherish Casey and I, because we bring money to their economy, even though they like us, they know our country is screwed, man, and they laugh at this wall thing. In fact, as I explained, if you buy a bag of marijuana or any drug here, it's all packaged the same, in the same amount, for the same price, because the government sells it, the cartel sells it, and each one of them has a little silver sticker. Every bag has a little silver sticker with a logo of some kind. For 2 months, a month ago, it was a sticker of Donald Trump on every bag of marijuana sold. And every bag of cocaine and amphetamine sold in Mexico, it had the little cartel sticker with a logo of Donald Trump. They laugh at the United States policies. They are angry. Not just Mexicans. I'm talking about people I've met people, I've been gone for almost 6 years, and I've met people all over the world. And the general consensus is, if you can get the person to be honest, it's very hard to get them to talk bad about the United States because they're scared. But when you become friends with these foreigners and they start telling their truth, they laugh and joke at the politicians and the way the government's running, and they're scared, and they realize the U.S. is dominating the world, trying to dominate the world.
I don't really talk about politics much to anybody, but if they do ask me, I let them know right off the bat where I stand. And then they know that I'm on the same page as them, that, you know, what's unfolding in America is, you know, what it is. And, yeah. So
I tell my kids, when my kids travel and fly around, I tell them to put a Canadian sticker on their luggage or wear a shirt that they're from Canada, because the rest of the world they don't like Americans, bro. That's been my experience.
I will have to say, though, that the marijuana that I buy does not have a little sticker on it, and I kind of wish it did, because maybe they would have more pride in it, because the marijuana that I get is the worst shit I've ever smoked in my life. But I did come from Colorado, though, so I mean, Colorado is the cutting edge of the future of marijuana. But I can tell you, the weed down here is just terrible. And the Wi-Fi is not that good. So, but I've been able to deal with those two drawbacks.
Hey, you know, that's one question that I have. What happens when internet connection or another internet? I'm like, you know, screw this, man. It goes to, you know, leave me alone as distributed space-based suck it. You know, when that happens, you know, does that change your positioning, that you would open up your life to other places you're willing to explore more?
Me, I will say that I think I understood your question. I have never said, so I'll sometimes I'll say it 10, 15 times a day, I cannot believe that it's 2017 and this is the internet. I mean, sometimes I've contemplated moving to Merida just so I could have some internet that's better. Because, you know, I'm starting to make videos and stuff, and I mean, I'll make like a 4-minute video, and it'll take me like 2 days to upload it, and it's just like, oh my god.
Well, here's what's happening there. If you'll allow me to jump in, you know, movies like Thrive have shown this pattern, or the people who own the world, their ability to digress or dial down energy. And we've seen that where there's less energy, there's less development, there's less evolution. Where a lot of energy is allowed, people flourish. So the people, the families that own this world, who have the militaries in the countries, U.S., Israel, England, those type of people have the ability to dial down energy levels in certain countries, like in certain countries in Asia, here in Mexico. They dial down the energy to keep people from evolving and from thriving. I believe the same is with the internet. Like Casey said, I'm working on 10 megs here. This is 2000 and what? 19, something like that. Come on, y'all. We should already have satellite internet, or what Mr. Ernest was talking about a while ago, that we're fixing to have some there. We should already have lightning speeds, Zoom internet. But I believe the government keeps that from us and keeps us on this 10 meg shit to suppress us. See, like Casey's an activist. Casey has some good information, but it takes him 12 hours to upload one video to get to somebody, so it's frustrating. If he could upload that same video in 10 seconds, he could get more information out. And this is an information war, if there's any war at all, and it's a war on ones and zeros.
Barry,
yeah, they're shutting down Terran.
Yeah, well, Case has his channel's very spiritually uplifting, and you get a lot out of it. And what's crazy is he doesn't post much, but then his views will get like 400,000 views or something. If you had the ability to actually post, man, you'd be killing it on YouTube.
Yeah, bro.
And I'm sure if there is something to be said for that, a guy preaching peace in this kind of world is always suppressed a little bit, And
one thing, Terran, I remember Terran was on the show a week or two ago, and we're gonna have him on again, and he went on a search for decentralized of "you can't shut me down" kind of suck it, platforms of whatever. And he did a post on it and was talking about that. And I'm wondering, in developing countries, or certainly your experience in Mexico, is it, Hispanic YouTube, or do they have their own channels?
I have a VPN router, so I can just choose whatever country I want to look like I'm coming from. So if I want to go to Netflix, I just go to the VPN and log into the United States, so I can get Netflix. Because things like Netflix, they do have their own version. Yeah, so I don't really have to worry about that. I can appear to be coming from wherever I want to.
No. I don't mean that. I mean, they have their own platforms, I
think the Mexicans
Hispanic something else.
I think the Mexicans use YouTube and Google just like you and I, just the Mexican version of it. They don't have their own platform that I'm aware of.
I know China does.
This is one thing that
China has their own.
Of course they do.
Oh yeah.
They have their own. They don't even barely know what Facebook is. They have their own thing that they just completely ignore it. It's pretty interesting.
Correct.
Well, this is the standard that, and Terran hates this because anybody that has cats hate this. My thing is, I'm going,
here we
you're
go.
free. Yeah, no, this is good. You'll dig it the most. I go, you're free when you can have catapult channel and they can't take it down. Okay, I mean cats being pulted. Okay, because they'll put up, the people and the governments will put up with all kinds of child abuse stuff, all the politics. That doesn't matter. But if you're abusing cats, man, they send in the Hellfire missiles, because there's a big giant consortium of people. You better take care of the cat. So I'm going, if I can put up a channel, even with freaking, play cats or something, and I'm catapulting in the cactuses and all that, and they can't shut it down, then you're free. And that's what I'm looking for, is a decentralized node blockchain, whatever the hell, internet or something, to where they can't stop this kind of communication, freedom stuff, things that Barry did, the thing that Case is advocated, things that Terran and myself are doing. That's why they want to have the capability to shut it down, but they're going to blame it on the cats.
Yeah, they're already throttling us back. Y'all know that. Just like Doctor said, if you're talking about peace and you've got some influence with a large enough audience, you're going to get throttled back on Facebook, YouTube, Google, even Google search engines. Hopefully, blockchains, y'all know that's supposed to fix it for us. I'm waiting.
It's better.
I don't know why somebody hadn't already I
Well,
know they got Steam It out there.
Yeah,
but
Barry,
something like a Facebook.
you're on Steam It, and I'm on Steam It, but you had to got in the beginning and be like a big whale to get any sort of credit. Like you got some decent pull there, but I can't get anything going on Steam It. It's really hard. But they have their own version of something called DTube. It's like decentralized. Library is what's coming down the road that I think is going to be huge. Library is completely blockchain. It's not running through some sort of nodes. Very, very interesting, and I'm keeping my eyes on that. And then there's Minds. But I'm reviewing these other platforms because they're here. It's just being tested out right now, and are they really as free as what they say they are? And what's interesting is I'm part of one called Minds, M-I-D. You can find it in the description, like, your Minds. If you want to join, there's a link down there, like an affiliate link. But what's interesting is you will see like white supremacist hate speech at Minds. Now you can filter that so it doesn't show up on your feed, but they don't take it down. I've seen like some porn.
They shouldn't.
No, they don't. They don't censor anything, and that's their stance. Is you can censor your own feed, so you don't have to see it, but it doesn't come down. So it's out there.
That's from where?
Minds, M-I-N-D-S. And if you
look, they can't. Well, see, we're gonna test it. You start the catapults, man. I guarantee you.
Yeah, cat abuse. I'll be the first guy in line coming after you for cat abuse. Now you could do it like you could do it like Steve
YouTube
Martin.
Started off that way. I remember when YouTube started, it was freedom, and there it went. And I hate building the platform and the audience and with all the stuff that all of us do I went off of YouTube in like 9-10 when they started on my rejoiners. Oh, that was you had 2 seconds too much of Led Zeppelin, man. Boom, you're demonetized, or we're gonna put on an ad. I'm like, suck it. I could already see what was coming. And then the Facebook thing. I know Tara and Angel Clark that down in Acapulco, they were really pushing Facebook. I'm going, they're not your friends. They're Zuckerberg's friends. You don't even know their emails. Yeah. So I'm just like, no, hell no. I am not helping these people. I don't give a crap how much they say they're for freedom. If they can't support my catapult channel, then they ain't freedom.
I love the cat test. I love the cat test.
It better be like, all I can say is, do you remember in Steve Martin? This is how old I am, right? I'm talking about the movie The Jerk, when The Jerk comes out, and they're trying to raise money, and the guy's talking about stopping cat juggling. And the dude's juggling cats, and then it was so obvious they were like fake cats, right? Like they couldn't. If you put fake cats in and catapult them, Ernie, I'll back you up. But that's it.
Yeah, but that would be
the clip
video that would. I'm gonna have to get me a cat so I can like have him jumping from sofa to sofa outside with the top, kind of and then you put like a. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I get the point.
If you're not really, if you put no harms were really harmed in this video, even if I did that, they don't care. It's going to be hell. I'll create the opposition to make sure that I get stopped.
Ernest, I'll have some answers in a few. I have to test these platforms to their fullest to see what's really going on. I should have an answer for you in like 2 months. I'm test running like 4 different platforms right now to see what's really allowed and what's not. And
I want to ask Case. Case, when you're doing your videos like this, and you have all of a sudden, I'll tell you. Elon Musk is already, like next year, supposed to be putting up 4,200 Mini Cooper size freaking satellites. They're going to ubiquitous Wi-Fi, 20 millisecond latency, 1 gig up, down, all over the world. Boom. And you know what? I have rockets to put them up. Then you have Virgin Galactic. They got their own CubeSat thing that they're putting up. You have Vector Launch Systems, which is the Nexus Crypto. His father is Jim Cantrell that started SpaceX with Elon, has a small rockets that are putting up a CubeSat network. So these are, and then there's another one, something one, and this. So at least 3 within the next 2 years are going to bypass this entire thing unless, Cox Cable starts getting out ion cannons or something, shooting down satellites, which don't laugh, So I'm going, this is going to change it. Like Barry was saying, once this information is instantaneous, cheap, and available all over the place, I'm going, how would that change your relationship with your audience? What would change where you would live? How would you, market that?
Was that to me?
Yeah, that was to you, Case.
I'm not sure it would. I'm not sure it would change it too much. But we're talking about throttling back. They can throttle back all they want, dude. They can't stop what's happening. It's the cat's out of the bag. People are waking up, and there's no way. There's nobody on this planet that's going to be able to stop what started. And obviously, everybody would. I would love to have a gig coming through. I might. But I mean, even when I'm in Celestune and I'm rolling on this dial-up, I can still get the information I want. It's a little bit more frustrating, but yeah. So I just I mean, I look forward to when we can skip the government and get their hands out of everything and just bypass them. But yeah, I'm not sure it would really change too much. It would be less frustrating. And who knows? Maybe it might change the whole thing. I don't know. Maybe I'll just start doing like a daily feed and just find out that people dug it. And I have no idea. But I certainly can't do a daily feed on dial-up. So right now it is what it is. But I look forward to Elon Musk rolling out his continuous flow of cutting-edge technology.
Well, my audience would grow if I could get a fair shake at this. The way they've got it now, I can never reach my full audience at one time. I have no way of talking to all of my fans on one show. YouTube will, I mean, if I've got 23,000 subscribers and 400 people see my video,
yeah,
400 views, but then the next one I post, I got lucky and hit something the other day, and I think I got 100,000 views, which I haven't had that happen in a long time. And Facebook will send out just a small percentage to my 5,000 people. I can't get more than 5,000. So it would, if we had this free decentralized system that Ernest is talking about, I would have a chance to speak to all of my fans, which is what the governments don't want because they're afraid somebody like me. Now, I would not do this. Everybody knows I call for peace. I do not believe we can win this thing with guns and using force. I'm against that. However, somebody with me who they think may have enough charisma, they don't want me to click a button and talk to 1 million people and say, let's all meet at the courthouse in 2 hours. They don't want that. So I saw when that trend happened. You know, I've been at this not as long as some of y'all, but for 11 years now, solid in activism, and it started right when the internet got popular. I really didn't know how to write an email when I first released those videos years ago, those Never Get Busted videos. And I saw the dialing down of certain activists and people quickly, them imposing like this 5,000 rule mark on Facebook and having to pay for ads. And, you know, everybody thought that was a way for them to make advertisement money. And it was. But the larger purpose of all of that was to keep people like me from getting 1 million people to walk on a courthouse one evening. And they're probably right because
of course
10
they
years
are.
ago, I would have done that. I would have gotten 1 million people to do it. I'm not like that
For
anymore.
you guys to look at it, sure, I want the audience and you guys to know what's coming. There's one called Made Safe, M-A-I-D Safe, SAFE.net. MadeSafe.net is just distributed all over the planet. They can't top it, stop it kind of internet thing. Then there's another one from the success of that. They started, it was called Filecoin, F-I-L-E coin.com. Now, Filecoin is raised it's one of the biggest ICOs ever, $200-300 million or something to do this. So I'm there, and what it demonstrated, whether they're the ones that do it or they're CIA or whatever, who cares? That's not the point. The point is that they are showing that there is a free market demand for exactly what you guys need, and the hardware and software is coming. And those that won't leave us alone, I don't know what the hell they're going to do, but they ain't going to like it none too much.
So, Ernest,
do y'all believe, y'all are smart, all three of you, do you believe we will have decentralized social media one day where it's fair?
Yep.
It's already out. It's starting to happen. The problem is there's just not many people using it yet. The platforms I'm testing so far, that's why they're built. They're like blockchain platforms that they can't stop stuff and bury it. And when you make a post,
I can't have my catapult videos.
Okay, I got you. But I'm saying it exists, Barry. I think it's very close. I'll keep you in the loop as soon as I figure this out. I'm going to give it a fair test. And then the other thing is, I would like to see, I'm Ernest. I'm very curious about when the technology will come to just simply skip around this dinosaur of an internet system, where we could just take it through the sky and send signals and not have to lay millions of dollars of cables underwater and all that, and that kind of technology. Because, there was all this bitching 10 years ago when people are like, well, the Federal Reserve's never going to let go of their monopoly. It's never going to happen. Audit the Fed, all this crap. And then people were like, screw it. Screw the Fed, screw the money. Let's just do Bitcoin. And people are like, no one will ever use a currency like that. Well, look at it now. Look at it now. So don't tell me no one's ever going to use stuff that, I heard that crap nonstop about Bitcoin.
Good point.
I wish you guys would stop talking about Bitcoin, because every time I hear the word Bitcoin, I kind of throw up a little bit in the back of my mouth.
You got rid of yours?
Because
Bitcoin
2 years
Cash.
ago, 2 years ago, when we didn't buy our house, I'm so anti-government. I just knew the dollar was going to crash, and I just started buying the crap out of gold and silver. And I was watching Bitcoin, and Bitcoin, it went to 1,200, and then it came down to 200. And it was just at 200, 200, 200. And now, if I would have bought Bitcoin, I would be worth $9 million, and my life would be from the rest of my journey here.
Case, I hear you.
Now I've made like $4,000 off my money, and I swear all I needed was one person to say, no, Bitcoin is anti-government. Bitcoin is outside of the government's reach. I would have jumped on Bitcoin.
Well,
but no.
We all spent it, Case. Like, I bought it back when it was $5, and I was buying sandwiches for $5, and I have a camera here now that is a $100,000 camera.
$20,000 hoodies.
I spent 11 because I bought them at $5. So when they got to like $110, I sold most of my Bitcoins and bought stuff. I was like, oh man, this ride's over.
Oh my God.
And so now I'm like, I have like a Bitcoin left. That's it. and there's like some change, some pocket change, and all of a sudden that pocket change is now real money. But I mean, I had lots at one point, and all my friends held on to theirs, and I feel so stupid. I'm like, I could be living the grand life, doing what I want, and not struggling. But there'll be another crypto. There'll be another crypto.
I bought a pound of
there will be. There will be.
I bought a pound of some really nice Canadian weed because, like Casey said, the weed the Mexicans sell you here is not that good. They ship the best weed to the U.S. who gives the best price for it. And me being Never Get Busted, which is, a marijuana, cannabis related channel, I've smoked some of the best weed in the world like Casey did from Colorado. And a gentleman came through here on the beach from Canada and had a pound of the good Canadian stuff. And I gave him some Bitcoin for it. So that's
Oh my God.
Yeah, I bought like solar batteries.
I don't regret it.
I bought batteries with a bunch, like solar batteries, and I was like, these batteries are going to be a lot more useful when the power goes out than Bitcoin. And now it's like, man, if I had just held that for 2 years, I could have bought a whole solar system for the house. It's like, it's killing me.
Well, what I did with my Bitcoin about a year ago, I went on one of the exchanges, which I warned everybody not to do. And I go on the Bittrex, and I took $1,000 in Bitcoin, and I said, of these 4,200, however many cryptos there are, what would you select in? I go, you invest in the philosophy. Which ones are more anonymous? Which ones are faster? Which one has lower transaction fees? Which one? So I go, this, and I can't get my crypto off fast enough. I'm trying to keep it under 5,000. Now Bittrex goes, oh, yeah, it's kind of your money, but you can't have it now, okay? So I'm going, well, what the hell's the difference in the bank? Well, of course, they go, well, with compliance of you need your passport with a selfie photo of it's kind of almost your money. You just can't have it right now. So I'm going, next. So this is whatever is coming next. Well, the next thing is going to be the throttling down of, transmission and laws that you're not allowed to send ones and zeros if it happens to be these kind, or, all this crap. Yeah. So when you're talking about what is available, and I'm going, all I did is I put in space internet, and here you go. I put in the press. FCC grants OneWeb approval for launch over 700 satellites for space internet coming as early as 2018. SpaceX is pushing hard to bring the internet to space, and that's in 18 also. NASA taking first steps towards high-speed space internet. Like I give a crap what they do. We're one step closer to getting cheaper, faster internet from space. And these are all, Washington Post and, USA Today, whatever, blah, Newsweek. Here we go. Satellite startup raises $1.2 billion for space internet. Why Richard Branson's newest space company could be a lucrative venture. And Vector successfully launches prototype rocket for small satellites. On and on and on. This, I'm telling you, man, it's a coming. And I just want to make sure you guys know about it. As Case gets taken off.
No, Case said he'll be back in a minute.
Oh, okay.
So, go ahead, Barry. Take it.
Do you believe we're going to have fast internet that we deserve? And how long, Mr. Ernest? How many years do you believe before I can get the internet that I would love to have?
The capability is there now. The capability of putting it in practice will be within the next 12 months. The capability of the governments to try and stop it, I don't know.
Wow, yeah. Yeah.
Because that's what it is. It's not that they can't do it. They're doing it. I remember CubeSats, these 10-centimeter cubes that could, it's like putting an iPhone in space that can transmit a lot of it. They could do this now. The thing is that I'm going, where did that come from? It was Kickstarters by college students. Well,
Is it true what I talked about earlier, that governments do purposely dial back?
Hell yeah!
And that's what I thought. Yeah.
Hell yeah! Well, these companies are freaking the government. Most of them are funded by some government thing, or they got their nose into it. I just found out, we kind of got news of it before, and we started making a big deal out of it. Bitcoin is all of a sudden I always say, well, if they can stop it, they will. If they can, they will. How can? Well, they can't. They'd have to get hold of core development, and they would have to do all the minor stuff. And I go, well, then the hell, they're going to do it. I mean, what, $200 billion market cap ain't nothing to these guys. So then what do you find out? Here's some of the funding, $55 million to Blockstream and the developers comes from AXA Insurance Venture Capital, blah, blah, blah. And it's run by Henry DeCastries, which is the Bilderberger chairman. I'm going, I didn't have to scratch the surface very much on that one. So it's not, these are all demonstrations of the technology being hijacked. If it can be, it will be. So it has to be designed so that it can't. And that's what's coming, this whole new wave of people with our philosophy that understand in the tech, and it's going to be soon. And there's going to be a battle. They have to have mushroom clouds to try and distract from something.
Okay, I have to jump in here. When we reach that point, then what is quantum computers going to do to us then, especially if they develop those everything out? Yes or no?
Oh, no, it's coming.
And is it true that if the wrong people get the quantum computers, which it looks like they will, then this technological war of ones and zeros, we can't get anything out if they choose not to let us, right? Yes, no?
This is, I think it's just like with any other technology. The man wants to get it, and they think they got it, and they get a head start for a year or two, and they get like nobody else is going to figure it out or do it, and there's not, the freedom guys are going to come and take it and beat you over the head with it. So I'm of the opinion quantum computing is a lot closer than people say. They go, oh, that's 10, 20, 30 years in the future. Bullshit. Okay. If they already making, that means they already got them. All right. It's a happening. The thing is that how would we use this computing power? Well, I don't know, but we're going to find out. And it's really getting down to you guys. I mean, look at who we have here. Taryn, Case, Barry, all of you represent what they very much want to regulate, control, and dial down. When you have the ability to dial it up even a little bit more, I don't know what's going to happen, but they're going to expose themselves trying to stop you from communicating and having more than 5,000 friends. What the hell you think that was about? I remember when people have 60,000 friends. They go, oh, hell no, we got to dial that down to 5,000. and I hardly bitched. And even if they did, how would you know?
Exactly.
I personally feel that they're in the process of imploding, and that I mean I really see the controllers as I see their cycles done, and we're seeing the final throes of them trying to stay in control. But I honestly I just believe that their time's up, it's over, and that they aren't going to be able to stop their demise. Just my opinion.
It's an opinion. It's up here.
Well, and that's good. And you're right. An opinion is an idea or a wavelength of energy, and we know through quantum physics that things split. I see it like Dr. Taryn described it one time, and this is actually what they're saying in quantum physics, is that there's a split taking place right now. Because I see proof of a world going to hell and being taken over and ran by these forces and depopulizing and all the horrible things that some people are predicting. I see evidence of that happening.
Well, that will happen
and I also
in that world.
I also see evidence of a world that you're talking about, which is the world I hope to be in. And that's the one where we're using our minds and gathering enough people together to the right signal of peace and love and these things
Absolutely.
that really do work. And these humanitarian civil rights arguments that are going on all over the world won't be arguments anymore. They'll just be known to us as birthrights. That's the planet I live on. But I believe we are in some type of a split.
That's exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying
two worlds. We're going to have two worlds, and those who believe in that world and have invested their energy and their emotions. The emotions are a very powerful thing. And we forget to talk about emotions. Well, emotions are coding. We are coders. We're living in a big virtual reality right now, a really good one. But
I think you'd like my site.
Yeah, you guys need to hang out.
Okay.
Well,
yeah.
Barry fits
Doctor,
right in with our tribe case.
Doctor, you're just joining us, but I was telling them that what you explained,
I heard.
I feel like we're two worlds that are splitting. Well, we're basically avatars, and the remote controller is inside each one of us. There's not somebody out there controlling us like a video game. And our keyboard to code to send the ones and zeros to the monitor is our thoughts and our words. So I believe there's a large group of humanity coding one way, and a large group of humanity coding another. And according to what we've seen exampled in the video game industry, and we're creating ours, and we're kind of somewhere in the middle, in between that. I'll be glad when it splits.
I couldn't agree with you.
And I want to be.
That's exactly what I believe.
Yeah, Case, take this, because this is your world. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, that's exactly that's how our reality operates. I mean, it appears physical, but we are all, it's just vibration and frequency, and that we are literally creating our lives with our thoughts and our emotions. And there is a splitting going on right now. And I actually, I've heard the theory of two worlds, but I think there's just infinite number of parallel universes, and that we're constantly sliding through these universes. But I do think that on the mass level, that it is there's definitely a splitting happening. And I think America perfectly reflects that. I mean, if you look, it's everything is rising to the surface to be healed. And just like, if you have hatred in your heart, dude, that hatred is increasing. And if you have love in your heart, that love is increasing. And I mean, I honestly don't care where I am in the world. I know who I am and what I create. And I could walk into the most nasty area in the world, and I have a bubble of protection around me, because I am creating my world, and people treat me the way I treat them. I mean, when that whole, what you put out, what you get, dude, that's the way our reality works. And
yeah, your vibe attracts your tribe, but what the problem is, we do code our own future, but there's other people out there coding sometimes more powerful than us, and we get caught up in their coding. Like I didn't code jails and I got caught in jail. I got put in jail 9 times. Well, that was a result of me being, for whatever reason, caught up in their coding. So as important as it is to code with our thoughts and our voices, it's also important to avoid other bad coding.
Yeah, no, if you have a social justice warrior rally of whatever and all right going, avoid it. What if they had a rally and nobody went? Who cares? You know, I call it, I've been doing this for years. My wife never really understood, and I'm glad you guys kind of picking up on it, because I call it quantum reality. I don't know, for lack of a better term. If I took one step towards anything, doing my carbon nanotube battery project, building domes, doing aquaponics, the chickens, the looking and talking about and freedom and orient and loveolution and whatever, doing that, all of a sudden it would manifest itself. Any physical effort on my part, any mental investment in doing it, it would happen. Build a ship. I mean, you know, I go to pirateswithoutborders.com. This is the power of positive thinking. And I know this has been, you know, explained probably better by a lot of people, but I have experienced it myself. If you put yourself in that love, if you start, that's why they, them, those or something, there is some coding program knowledge, you know, Java, whatever the hell language that they're playing with our brains to keep us from this veritable utopia that we can create just by thought. And I'm going, nope, 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 nope. That's why the opening of my show is no fear, no fear, no fear. And this is, and I think fear is the thing that they use the most to kind of derail a lot of this beauty that is just right around the corner. And that's why I use Top Tech News on the left side of Freedom's Phoenix. It's all the tech that are doing a lot of this stuff. Then the ones that help the individual goes to pirateswithoutborders.com, and you look at those categories, and it is all of the empowerment of how we are going to live the life of Case and Barry.
Nothing will lower your frequency faster than fear. Fear is that.
Well, fear decodes us. You know, I have this drug rehab center. I myself have had the temporary brain disorder of addiction, and have went through the healing of that. So I understand it very well. And you know, nobody's talking about it, but I'm convinced that these addictions, temporary brain disorders that are caused from traumas, abuse, painful situations, when we go through a trauma or we go through abuse or we go through a painful situation, our coding is changed. The ones and zeros that we're made out of, that all gets disorganized in our hard drive, and we start outputting horrible stuff. We become addicts. We become violent people. We become thieves, that type of thing. It's because our hard drive, our ones and zeros have all been screwed up. And the Western medicines don't see it as ones and zeros. They see it as a more physiological thing, which is fine, but they give medications to cover it up and not fix it. Well, it turns out psychedelics, I'm talking LSD, mushrooms, ayahuasca, and ibogaine, which is what I treat people with here in Mexico. Those things they're going into the human and looking for the bad coding, and it realigns and puts those ones and zeros back into shape like their hard drive should be. It resets the hard drive of the human being, and we don't know how the psychedelics are doing it exactly, but I believe that's what's going on. You know, the research is showing, you're going to hear about microdosing in a big way. Microdosing is going to be one of the most popular things you've heard of. Remember, I told you that. We've got people like Timothy Ferriss, and he just released a book, and a chapter of the book was called Food of the Titans. Well, it turns out, just like I tripped ayahuasca, the very strong psychedelic, next to the HBO president of Europe, Timothy Ferriss came out, and now he's talking, he names these titans that are microdosing LSD and microdosing mushrooms. And microdosing means you take such low levels, you don't get the psychedelic effect, but you get that coding that is realigned. You know, I'm the first person to come out and explain and go against this religion of shamanism. These shamans that are in the jungles giving these people ayahuasca, which is just DMT, or giving people ibogaine, and they're claiming they have favor in the spirit world, so they get the good angels to cure them of their disease and all their problems and all that. Well, I took the science of what ayahuasca is with DMT and the science of what ibogaine does and started publishing it. And that's what people are attracted to that come to my center. They realize it's not a spirit out there healing them, but it's the medicine. And we're learning that all the medicine is doing is bad coding, rearranging it, and giving the person a reset. It's incredible. I'm so passionate about these psychedelic treatments because it matches my favorite subject, and that's quantum physics.
Now I can tell. Case, you know, you were talking about frequency. Can you emphasize what you're meaning about that? Changing frequency is a measurable thing, or is that metaphorical? What do you mean?
No, that's just the way every single thing in our reality is vibrating at a different frequency. You can think of it like water. You know, water is vibrating at a certain frequency. Well, you turn that into ice, it's vibrating at a different frequency. You turn it into steam, that's a different frequency. And so, so frequency, like, I guess back to what Barry was talking about. I don't even know where to start. It's such a big topic.
Barry took time. Go ahead.
I love y'all. Peace and love.
He's back. Our thoughts. That's a frequency. Obviously, you know, if you're looking at somebody and you have this hatred because he has a towel wrapped around his head, because he's trying to honor his version of his God, that's a certain frequency. And if you look at somebody and you see this beauty in them, that's a frequency. Every single thing is a frequency. And so, you know, we're just drunk on this physical experience that we think that everything's physical, but nothing is physical. I mean, how many times do we have to be told that, you know, when you go down to the level of an atom, or, you know, the Planck scale, there is nothing solid. It's just vibrating strings of energy. And so, our senses are so limited that we aren't able to, I mean, like right now, our senses, I mean, there's infrared waves, there's Wi-Fi waves, there's all, we're looking at a sliver of reality. But once you can break out of that sliver, you would start seeing that not only is everything vibrating, but everything is actually emitting a light. And so, you know, it's hard to describe. It's like you said, Ernest, it's hard to describe that stuff. But when you apply these concepts into your life changes. And the more you realize that you are creating your life, the faster you do it and the more efficient you get. And then you notice these thoughts that come in that are, say fear-based, and you recognize them, and it's like, but you can't prove that to anybody. They have to experience that in their life.
But then you attract those kinds of people, though. I mean, you know, it almost, you build communities that way that aren't necessarily based geographically. It's just an opinion. See, this is the one thing I've really been emphasizing this here of late.
Absolutely.
It's just opinion. We got to change our opinion. Well, how are you going to change law if you're not, you know, pounding on some legislator's door and doing it? I'm going, I don't care about them. It's just everybody's opinion. When your opinion is that they suck, you know, and I want to hang out with these people, I want to do this. That's my opinion. This is what should be. What they want you to do is they want, they, them, those won't leave you alone. It doesn't matter who they are. They're going, your opinion has to be this about that, you know, and I'm going, I don't have that opinion. That's what this whole thing is all about, trying to change your opinion, that you should be afraid of these people. You should love these people. You should vote for these guys. You should. And I'm going, how about peace, love, and leave me aloneism? I mean, you know, I'm good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bravo.
I think it was like that. I caught just the snippet of some other guy that was on here, and he was talking to Barry about the eye of the hurricane, and I thought that was interesting
George
because
Donnelly,
yeah, I am my eye of my own hurricane. You know what I mean? Like I know
That's
this
good.
is creating my life.
I like that.
Yeah, your hurricane can move around all over. Everybody just
That's
say,
it.
"Hey, I'm in my eye.
Whatever I want.
Case, you got the title of your next video. You got the title of your next video.
I am my
man.
hurricane.
That's awesome.
So,
Barry.
and I,
Oh, sorry.
you know,
Go ahead.
I'm done.
Case.
No, I'm done. Done.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've spent lots of late nights discussing the simulation theory or whatever your flavor of that may be. But what happens is when you start having experiences, you know the truth, when it feels it down to your core. It doesn't really matter what people say or what it is, but when you have that experience, you know it. And Barry, I want to ask you though, because you were the first person that I've ever heard talk about microdosing. So could you explain how to do that? And like if I wanted to do shrooms or something, are you saying that you just eat a little bit after you have like an experience and then you just eat it every day, or like how does that work?
I would go to Arrowwood and find the dose that would make a person high on the mushrooms, and then cut that in force, and then that would be 4 microdose units. In other words, find out the level that gives you the psychedelic experience, and then 4th it, or even 8th. What they're doing now, the tabs of LSD, unfortunately, even though these guys are chemists making the LSD, they put a drop, little square. Well, next to that square is another square, so you have a sheet of squares. So you really don't know how much you're getting per square. But we've not had any problems, and the reports are if you take one of those little LSD squares, cut it in quarters, and just take the quarter.
Well,
like experience, you'll get all this resetting of neurons and what we've been talking about.
Yeah, Barry, I just kind of want to explain that a little better. Is because a lot of people say that their first real connection to the other side is usually a psychological drug, and when you take not psychological, I mean a psychotropic drug. Thank you, psychotropic drug. So say like you blow open the doors taking mushrooms or something. Do people microdose just to keep that spiritual connection? Like, does that spiritual connection start to drift off until your next big dose, or like why are they microdosing? You're saying I understand. You're saying it works at a DNA level, that it's changing stuff and keeping it going. But as far as how would I feel that? Would I feel just a lot more connected? Like, give me an idea of what it's like.
You will grow faster in all areas. You will grow. You'll grow more spiritually. You'll find it easier to connect spiritually. Spiritual growth never quits. I mean, you don't reach a top. That's what I don't like about religions. They always have some kind of top guy we're supposed to worship. But so microdosing, you're going to feel it much easier to be spiritually connected, whatever spiritual connection means to you. You're also going to find yourself able to think and focus better because the microdosing seems to defragment, put everything in segments where it's easier to keep up with instead of this, we're thinkers, right? Well, fortunately, I have principles I operate by, so I can categorize things. But even in that, my brain can swim at times, and the microdosing stops that, making it my work much more enjoyable, less irritability. Now, I don't care how loving and peaceful you are. I'm like one of the most loving and peaceful guys you'll ever meet. In fact, I got people around that take care of me now because I'm so easy to be taken advantage of. But I've learned recently. Well, the microdosing, a thought sometimes. What was I saying right before that? And I'll finish my point.
You were talking about how, I like this analogy that it works kind of like defragging a computer. That you go in there and it realigns files.
Yeah. So my brain swims, even though I work within certain categories of self-categorize my thinking. My brain swims a lot, and it stops that where I can focus. I also have less cravings for alcohol. You know, I've had a problem with alcohol almost my whole life. I grew up in Texas, and we started drinking beer at 3 years old. And so I find addictions are much easier to be controlled. There's less irritability. That's where I left off a while ago. Listen, y'all, I don't care how loving and peaceful you are. What I've noticed in my personal life and others around me, the older we get irritable. And I think that's because our coating has been wore out. We don't put up with shit, or things just get on our nerves a little more. So we tend to retract, and we quit looking for friends because we don't need them anymore, and that type of thing. Well, the microdosing seems to be lifting that to where it's easier to be social, and I don't retract as much.
You know, I said psychotropic, and that's kind of its own thing. But what you're talking about really is psychedelic drugs.
That's what I meant.
Yes.
Yeah.
The psychedelics have its own kind of special alignment. That's why ayahuasca is, starting to rise up, and you get the God particle of the drug of we're better. So I'm wondering if this is kind of the frequency thing that Case is talking about, and we, like you say, defrag the computer, and we go down that line. Would that be one of the reasons why, like, maybe the CIA came up with, truth serum, LSD, and they go, whoa, man, screw this. We woke people up. That's like Larry doing, turn on, tune in, drop out kind of deal. And they go, damn, that's exactly what they're doing. And what Case and family has done is a neon flashing example of that, So I'm wondering, Case, have you, experienced psychedelic drugs at all? Has that had a help with that? Or you just, marijuana kind of does the same thing?
I would say
Marijuana.
I'm sure that microdosing is perfect for some people.
Yeah, it's called marijuana.
But if I'm going to take some shrooms, man, I'm going to take some shrooms. I'm doing the real deal. I've done shrooms. Yeah. I've done acid. I've never shied away from. In fact, I would say before this awakening happened to me, that I would say that besides the birth of my kids, that some of the most spiritual, consciousness expanding moments I've ever had in my life were on either mushrooms. Well, basically mushrooms.
Therefore, it must be outlawed.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah, you couldn't have war if everybody was doing mushrooms.
But mushrooms, man, like nobody is going to abuse mushrooms. I mean, if somebody thinks you can abuse mushrooms, they've never taken mushrooms, because when you take mushrooms, you don't wake up the next day and be like, yeah, let's do that again. You know what I mean? Like, you're good for a while. You need to process that.
Exactly. I'm hit to that. You need to experience it and think about it and pontificate on it.
I took LSD for a year, at least 3 times a week.
Well, Barry, did you? Is LSD different than mushrooms? I've never done LSD. Is it a whole different kind of vibe?
To me, I can't tell the difference except the LSD.
Pretty similar.
I can't tell the difference except the LSD lasts about 14 hours, and sometimes you want it to stop, and you cannot get the LSD to stop. The best thing to do if you do start feeling uncomfortable is to take a Xanax, have something like that nearby, and that'll tone it down a little for you. But mushrooms are a lot safer because they last about 4 hours. But you can overdose on them. You do not want to eat too many mushrooms at once. So get your levels right and have a good time. I'm like Casey there. I microdose, but I also like to get to the levels that do cause the conscience shifts.
I feel like I'm living. I feel like I'm living at a microdose level anyway. I really do.
That's awesome.
You know, that's one thing.
That's
you know,
awesome.
that Barry said that I really triggered on. You go, I feel like the emotion or the state that I wanted to get was some chemical that I took by just feeling safe and secure. I mean, that right there is a high. Oh, life's a high. And it's not if you're in a freaking, you know, basement of getting the crap beat out of you. I mean, you know, I'm just, if you're out in the world, you can get high on life. Well, what do they mean by that? Well, living. I mean, you know, not being oppressed, not being feared all the time. You know, so, you know, Case, I want to ask you about that. You know, Barry expressed himself that just the security that he feels is a high in and of itself. How has that impacted your family? Are they emotionally different?
I guess you would. I have everybody that ever meets my family, my kids, they all rest with their. I don't know. Maybe that's because they're not seeing them when I see them, but no, I think my kids are just really well grounded. They absolutely know they're creating their life. You know what I mean? There's no. They definitely walk in because that's really all they know is what I've you know, that I am their example, and that just happens to be you know, I started realizing I was creating my life probably, I don't know, 11 years ago. And so, you know, I dabbled with the idea of quantum physics. And so, you know, even when you would start literally seeing the manifestations, you know, there's always a doubt. Like, that's just a coincidence, or how'd that happen? That's just a fluke. And then eventually you just become, you know, there becomes less doubt and more knowing. And then I went through a little process in 2012 where I immediately stepped into just a knowing. And you know, it's hard to describe, you know, what that means. If you checked out my site, you might understand a little bit more. But so I just know. So I like last time something happened to me and I said, and I didn't take full responsibility. You know what I mean? Like, I probably go overboard in taking responsibility for things that happen to me. So I don't know. I think I have some great kids. They're very open-minded. You know, I'm only going to say real positive things about my kids anyway. So, but no, I think what I'm doing is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing.
Well, Case,
is there any negative waves?
Oh, okay, good.
I think he's a good coder. I think Casey's a good coder. He's a master coder of this video game we're in. He's obviously at peace. He's figured some things out for himself. He's confident. Those are all signs that you just learned to code, bro. Congratulations.
Yeah. I actually think, here's the way I look at it. Let's go back to that video game. I look at it as like, you know how when you play a video game, you know, and then, you know, you start playing, you choose the environment, and then you start playing the game. Well, when you're playing, you know you're not the character. You're the dude playing the character. You're the guy playing the game. And so I felt like I had been, I felt like I had been thinking that I'm down here in this reality and I'm the one in control. You know what I mean? Like, I'm the one that's like, you know, this is what I want and this is what I got to do to get here. And what happened to me is I realized that, wait a second, there is a larger non-physical aspect of me that chose this character. I'm the character, but I'm not me. I'm also the non-physical aspect of me. And so when this happened, it was almost like the remote control, you know what I mean, of playing this game. My remote control started working again. And so I feel that my higher self, my non-physical side, communicates to me through urges, instinct, synchronicities. And when I feel these urges and when I feel these instincts and when I act upon them, everything always works out perfect. Go ahead.
I think the mushrooms helped you develop that ability to code at that level. That's what psychedelics do. I
think psychedelics are definitely a way for people to break out of the rigid sense of this physical world and to start contemplating other things. But for me personally, I know it was this process and these frequencies I talk about on my website and the healing work that I do. These frequencies have speeded up my awakening to such a point. It's like I literally feel like, you know how, so if you live a life, you know, you're going to gain this certain amount of wisdom through this life. You know what I mean? And then, you know, you come back and you start fresh. And so I believe that, you know, we've lived thousands of lives, experiences on this planet. And for some reason at this time in history, that we are starting to access the wisdom from all the lives we've ever lived. And so, because it just feels like for some reason we are waking up to not who we are, but who we are, dude, like everything. And so that's what I think's happening. And I think it has to do with our DNA also. I think our DNA, for whatever reason, was disconnected. And I think we've spent just umpteen thousand years connected from who we really are. And I think that now is the time that was predicted, that we're going to start remembering who we are and awakening. And I, you know, to be honest with you, I can't help but think that, you know, this 2012 shift, that something happened. And I mean, maybe it's just taken us a few years to look back, but on my videos and the people I've met around the world, something is happening and it's real, and people everywhere are waking up. They're letting go. Because what happens is, as soon as you start to remember this, and as soon as you start to remember who you are and tap into this wisdom, dude, the fear's gone.
Yeah.
Like, there's no fear. And you
No
can
fear.
smell fear a mile away. And you know, fear, people don't even know what I'm talking about. Dude, fear is so wrapped up in nationality and patriotism, and oh, it's disgusting. So I'm done with the fear. I'm just,
You know, yesterday we had Doug Casey on for 2 hours.
Smell it. It makes me. So that's what I think.
Exactly what you're talking about, Case. We had Doug Casey on. He's talking about all this kind of this stuff and everything. And he's, you know, a few years ago, he was kind of running down a little bit. He's like in his 70s. We've known him for a long time, and he's starting to get more spry. I don't know what he's doing. He's eating you know, whatever, stem celling, whatever the hell he's doing. He's getting, you know, back to his old self. And I'm going, he goes, yeah, as long as you can live one more year and extend life another year, after a while, you just, you know, live forever. I mean, you know, so there's different things that are happening. But one thing that we got on the spiritual aspect, as you were describing it, he was kind of going down this road. I'm going, you know, Mr. Anarchist Atheist of I don't believe in. He's getting a little bit more spiritual, kind of there's some frequency of something. So you may be having some impact on Doug or something, because he's...
No, something is clearly happening. And I mean, this is happening and this is real. And when you actually start to get your mind around how we're waking up, and we're just letting go of this concept of separation and duality, and stop blaming other people. And when you let go of that, man, this is real. And when you start to grasp that, movies like Star Wars and The Matrix, dude, they pale in comparison to what is actually happening on this planet. And yeah, I don't know. I guess I'll just leave it at that.
I'm curious.
No, I'm with you, brother.
How many of us started out as, like, I can remember being kind of an atheist, that, you know, a science guy, show me the science, and then how I transitioned. I'm wondering if Barry, Case, or Ernie, if you guys used to be atheists too.
Well, I was a preacher I pastored my own church, and I played Bible roulette with my congregation. I could give them the Bible and they could turn to any page and give it to me, and I look at it for 5 minutes and preach on it for an hour. So, and I was a dedicated Christian, and I believed that. When I learned that was cuckoo, I was devastated. That's one of the most letting down things of my life, but it was also one of the most powerful things that happened to me. And I realized it wasn't, you know, religion running all this. Now, my personal belief is The spirit world, there are other beings and such out there, but they're not spirits per se. They're just different dimensions, like Casey's talking about, all these different dimensions crossing, and quantum physics explaining that we're parts of a part. You know, it's not just a 1 and a 0 anymore. It's a 1 and a 0. It can be a 1 and a 0 at the same time. What quantum computing is doing. So I believe when people have these experiences, these spiritual enlightening experiences, I don't believe it's a Buddha or a Jesus or anything like that giving it to them. I believe it's coding that has opened up into their life, and they got a new download. They got the freshest and the hottest nose. Match.
You know, one thing I'd like to
science
here. There was a. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were done. I think you were cutting up.
Yeah, Barry's frozen there for a sec.
I do believe you can have a relationship with a spiritual being, but it's just a digital being from another dimension.
You know, I've been hearing this more and more. I talk to a lot of, people. Once you get comfortable, you're old enough, you're wealthy enough, the first thing you start doing, you can't escape yourself. I mean, your traumas as a child, whatever's going on, they go to a lot of different extreme lengths to doctors and brain, manipulations or chemical, whatever the hell they got to do to try and be more comfortable and live a happier life. Having another Lamborghini is just not going to do it.
Yeah.
So I'm going, this is, I see this wave coming. We need to, deprogram ourselves so we can be happy and have better relationships and raise children better and all that kind of stuff. Well, one thing we were talking about mushrooms, I started off as, leave me alone this time, whatever, but I was looking for the truth. And I became Christian in the late 80s. And no, it was like 82, 83. And it was, I could see it was a leap of faith. When I okay, you accept Jesus says, then there was a big giant weight of a physical thing that came off. This surrender thing had a physical impact on me. And I go, ooh, what the heck was that? So this is, from then, probably now I wouldn't have exposed myself to that kind of surrender. I just as I was younger and I experienced it. But then you start seeing how that hardware that we have to have that kind of feeling is manipulated and taken advantage of by churches and governments and sport teams and whatever. I mean, there's something real there and they hijack it. So then I started seeing, like, Time Magazine did a thing on it, and there's books about it and so on, that Jesus in the New Testament, the Christians, was a mushroom cult. A lot of the artwork is them, there's mushrooms all around you put Jesus and mushrooms up, boom, it explodes all over the place for a couple of millennia, So this is kind of what I think exactly what we're tapping into is not, the humans a couple of thousand years ago aren't significantly different from us now. They were thinking the same, hell, they had more time to think about it. So they were looking at the same kind of things of reprogramming yourself for tolerance, love, use witness, parable, testimony. None of this, go make the legions over there, make Caesar make you be your brother's keeper kind of thing, and I got a spear. So I'm doing, this is why I saw, when we did, I was a Maricopa County chairman of the Libertarian Party in the 90s, and we had a bunch of bumper stickers we were doing, and I insisted on having one that says, Jesus is libertarian. Because they were doing this, we're a Christian nation, Republican, that kind of crap. And I go, hey, Jesus is a libertarian, man. He uses witness, parable, testimony, voluntary persuasion of suck it. I don't know why you guys want to go bomb everybody, and you're for love, So it's just, I can see a renewal of a spiritual aspect, but not so much that it's some institution or even a book. It's just an awareness. And Mark Victor, big atheist that he is, he goes to me and he says, Ernie, if you just agree that, God's only in your head, then we can not have this conversation. I go, well, where else would he be? I'm going, what the hell are you talking about? So I think as time goes on, even he will start to understand exactly what we're talking about. The real push of this spiritual aspect is us just coming to the awareness that we're connected in some way. Yeah. It's a physical thing.
Well, I want to jump in because I think Ernie, it's the future. The way I see it is starting. The way this all starts is decentralization. We're starting to decentralize our currency with Bitcoin. We're starting to decentralize information where we can get stuff out without it being repressed. And I think we're decentralizing spirituality. That now it is not in the hands of some religion or person. Everybody has their own experience, and they realize we're connected. And that's the way I think we're going to evolve. Is that these are functions of. It's just another thing we're going to decentralize, and I believe spirituality is that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Case, I'm
And
sorry,
man,
we didn't want to
I
leave him out.
crapless.
Let Case throw in his 2 cents.
Well, I wasn't raised in a religious family. I was raised by people that just lived the golden rule. You know, they treated people the way they want to be treated. So I wasn't religious, but I wasn't an atheist either. I just, you know, the concept of organized religion's concept of God just never resonated with me, even when I was younger. And the older I've gotten, the more I find it just despicable. I mean, I just cannot stand the damn concepts of hell and sin and guilt. I'm so done with that. And there, you know, I never put myself out in the public eye, so I just kept that stuff to myself. You know what I mean? It never bothered me. And when I started to wake up to the truth, I almost kind of thought it was cute, you know, that they had these little beliefs and but now I'm just done with that. Like, and you know, you want to talk about Christ, like, you know, here's what Christ said. Christ said, everything you can do, everything I can do, you can do and more. And he said, I am the Son of God. We are all the sons of the Most High. Now, if you talk to a preacher or something, you say, hey man, like, what does that mean? They're going to give you some crazy twisted concept that
Requires you to pay tithe.
you are so unworthy to be Christ's equal. You know what I mean? Like, you are this miserable sinner that needs to be saved. Well, I don't think that's what's going. I personally don't believe that Christ is coming back in the physical form. I think that the Christ consciousness is coming back, and it's not coming back. It's here. It's on the planet. And if you have love in your heart, dude, it starts to bloom. And if you have hatred in your heart, you'll have no idea what I'm talking about. There is,
you know, this
happening.
YouTube is going to be banned just from what you just said. We've been talking about for the past 10 minutes. You're not allowed, Taryn.
We're gods.
Well, do you think maybe that our consciousness goes through this evolution process, blooms, and then we realize what we are, and then we're like, well, let's go back and learn lessons again. So let's wipe our memory and go back and do this again. And we've just been doing this cycle where we're learning and discovering ourselves over and over. Because, I mean, nobody understands history after a few thousand years. Maybe we hit this a few thousand years ago.
I would agree with that.
Yeah,
but I think that something's different now.
I know it feels good to have peers like y'all. I'm sincerely grateful to be involved in a conversation like this with y'all. Are all from different places. We don't know each other. We don't have our personal lives intermingled, and we're all saying the same thing. That makes me feel at home here, because I don't feel at home on Earth. Everything is, this is all strange to me, but it's sure starting to feel more and more like home. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I'm able to be on this panel.
Oh, big heart.
And it's taco time, so I've got to scatter.
Yeah, this is a long one. And for that saying, let's go around and give everybody 2 or 3 minutes to say their parting words, because we are over by 30 minutes. But it's such good conversation. I hate to end it. Let's do this again in a few months, Barry.
Man, we were hot.
What? I didn't hear you.
I was just saying, that's the best time to end it, when it's at a really good.
This is a good high. That's true. I'd like to do this again sometime, guys. Case, even though you guys are on dial-up, your audio's fine. You and Barry, you're a little blurry, but you definitely get your message out to your crowd. So we can do this again in a month or two if you guys will come back. I hope you will.
Yeah,
And-
I really enjoyed
and
it.
I
got a lot out of it.
I definitely enjoy talking about the expat factor, but I also really, it's been a while since we've done some diving deep into spirituality, and it feels good. So, Barry,
Expat,
I'm
your
real
mind,
touched.
your ass will follow.
Yeah. So, Ernie, I'm giving you 3 minutes to say whatever you want to wrap it out, and then we'll go to Case and Barry.
It just seemed like more than 3 minutes. I'll do the egg timer.
Floor's yours, and I will interrupt. Go ahead.
The main thing that I really got out of this is that I think, a lot of people that have been involved in, just freeing their minds, the less fear, and not just taking the plunge, having faith. And then you go, all right, faith in what? Faith in what you know to be true, what you had positive feedback on. And the positive feedback I've had in my life, later as I've been doing activism since I was in my 20s, but really it's only been since the Loveolution you saw the manifestation of this kind of positive thinking and the love. Now, of course, they want to they want to hijack that. Look at all this great spontaneous order, and if we could just get them to vote our way, so I'm going, no, you're missing the point. This is not a border thing, and that's why I think crypto's really had a big impact to understand how much you could have interactions between people and not have jurisdictions or permission slips. And the big thing that I'm going for is to eliminate the idea and the practice that regardless of whatever dream or thing you want to do or idea that you had, is to not think you have to go to the blue pages in front of the white pages of the government department, a permission slip where you get to do something. That is their win. It's just doing it. So now that us, and living our lives, and we've started from our own experiences have come together to find out that we are like, look, this is a spiritual thing. This is a connection thing. This is a coding thing. It's a frequency thing. It's a shared consciousness thing. It is. And if you can get a little help with some ayahuasca to do that, pace, but I'm telling you, it's coming. And it's because they go, well, how do you know we're going to have ubiquitous internet coverage or whatever? And I go, because I want it. That's why.
Yep.
Yeah.
Reality's malleable. It'll be here if you want it. Case, why don't you take your parting words?
Yeah, I would say that if you're getting this feeling to get out of America, and you start seeing any kind of synchronicity that's saying, hey, wow, say if you say, hey, man, maybe we should go check out another country, and then that day you hear somebody talking about leaving the country, act on those impulses, trust yourself, quit rationalizing everything to death. What am I going to do with my stuff? What am I going to do with that? Quit rationalizing your dreams to death. Start trusting yourself, trust your instinct, and everything will work out. I mean, and if you want to go down, if you're interested in anything I'm saying, and you want to go down a rabbit hole so deep that you pop out the other side and you never want to come back, go check out my site, check out my YouTube channel. If you go to the resource page, there's tons of breadcrumbs that from teachers and scientists that have led me to the mouth of the rabbit hole that I went through, and I'm never coming back. And so, if you're looking for, where to go, maybe there's some helpful tips on there. I don't know, but I've had a fantastic time. Ernest, I wish I would have watched your stuff like 2 years ago. Maybe I would have bought some Bitcoins and forgot about
Oh
it.
no, I wish I bought some more. I spent it all.
But yeah, man, I had a great time. Always a pleasure to talk to you, Taryn, and you always bring on a bunch of cool people. Barry, absolute pleasure to meet you. And we are all connected, and there's a reason we're doing this together. And yeah, it's been a great time.
Yeah, Case, when you decide you're done with Guatemala, you should swing back through and actually hang out with Barry. He's probably on the way back. So
I think, yeah, when we're done with Mexico, we are going to head up the West Coast for sure.
So you guys should hook up for a few weeks.
Because you're on the West Coast of Mexico, right? You're on the West Coast of Mexico, right, Barry?
Yes.
Yeah.
And either three of y'all have an open invitation to Puerto Vallarta.
Boom, done.
Yeah, you should stop teasing that, because I'll I'll come and I won't leave. I'll be like that guest that just won't
Pirates
leave.
Without Borders are coming.
When you land, we'll pick you up at the airport unless you come on a cruise ship like Mark Victor. Mr. Ernest, I've always been a fan of yours, and your wisdom runs deep, and that shows, and you couldn't have closed better. And Mr. Casey following up with explaining to get rid of the fears, and the good doctor putting all of us together. This has been a special moment in my life, and I'm glad I'm a part of it. Peace and love. Never get busted.
You're going to make me start crying.
That's so. I love the love. I mean, the vibration level is so high right now. Barry, just in case people want to get in touch with you, say they need an expert witness or what you do, tell them how to find you, or they want to come down for a ayahuasca trip.
Well, they can contact me through either of my websites. Nevergetbusted.com is the most long-running website I've owned and operated. But I have triptowellness.mx, where we treat pre-addicts, people for pre-addiction. We get to them before they get addicted. We treat addicts, and we treat people who just want to recode and encode through the use of psychedelics, ayahuasca, and ibogaine.
All right, excellent.
So if you're into that, come on and see us. It's a beautiful trip to wellness.
Yeah, that's a fascinating. I'm really glad to see somewhere in the world this is being done and that you're doing it. That's huge. Ernie, I forgot to let you tell people where to find you. So where?
Well, probably the hub would be freedomsphoenix.com. Freedom with an S, Phoenix spelled out PHOENIX.com. And then from there, you can get top right. It goes to Declare Your Independence with Ernest Hancock, the radio program. And then we have Pirates Without Borders is all over the place on that. PiratesWithoutBorders.com is probably for this audience. Freedom's Phoenix is like a news aggregator with some original content and kind of, whatever, but we show all sides. It's like, yeah, here's what the communists have to say. I mean, you can kind of pick, but the main thing is that with Pirates Without Borders, that's the philosophy of no fear that we're espousing, and we're going big or go home. So this is a perfect show for that.
Fantastic. You feel free to post it all you want. And on that, let's talk about that. I am been actively trying to move a little off YouTube, although I'm still building a YouTube audience. I mean, I'm crazy not to, but as Ernie has said and a million times, I'm trying to not be dependent on these big corporations. So I am moving to decentralized platforms. Right now I'm testing the ones you're seeing appearing right now, DTube and Steemit, Library and Speech, and Minds and BitChute. Any of those you can reach me on if you're on any of those decentralized platforms. If you like what I'm doing, hey, maybe drop a little crypto. It'd be nice. Support the show. It helps keep things going because as you guys know, I'm a full-time content creator, and YouTube has killed my ad revenue, so I'm finding other ways to stay afloat. So I have to sit here and tell you guys about that, so you know that if you're over there, I would love you to check it out. The other thing is I'm moving towards a Patreon model. Free me from YouTube. Help. If you just donate $1 a month, you guys could help me put on more cool shows like this. And I will have some really cool Patreon stuff coming out for more money. I'm working on some projects under wraps right now. But for right now, if you just want to help the show, it's lovely when I get a single donation. I love it. But to know I have a steady income really would free me to be able to do a lot more cool stuff.
Now, you make a bunch more money if you went down to Mako.
Yeah.
And you'd be warmer.
Believe me, I am been thinking about it a lot. At least spending some part-time down there. I still love the mountains in New Hampshire and the snow, but... And that being said, though, I am still on YouTube, so if you're still watching this, the rerun, you'll see these boxes appearing. Just click those and keep watching my stuff because any sort of view time helps. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Oh, geez, and if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. I mean, hit the little bell so you know when these live shows happen. I forgot about that.
I'm going to send you a little bit of crypto because I got so much out of it myself.
Oh, right on. Thanks. I'd appreciate that.
How the hell would I do that?
What kind of crypto do you want to send, Ernie? Because
Bitcoin Cash. Because are you freaking kidding me?
All right.
The transaction, Bitcoin's Segwit's dead, man.
I have never. I have never used Bitcoin Cash yet. I still have a bunch of it trapped in the blockchain wallet. I got to figure out how to get it. I don't know. It's always complicated. I hope it's not too late that I can still get it. I think I can. Anyway.
You get a crypto cash address, send it to me. I get you some because
appreciate
I love
that.
you, man.
I love it. Thanks, man. So there you go. There's a little oven. There's one step. You guys can keep donating so I can go visit Barry. One more step. And I also want to start getting into. You guys know that in the spring I'm going to start pushing natural, how to build with natural materials, looking at homesteading with natural things, and expanding. Because right now I just mainly talk about growing food, but I'd really like to start examining what structure would work the best up north, and where you're at. So we're gonna start talking about that. Okay, thank you guys so much, and remember, if you're watching on YouTube, click this. Lots of love, support each other, love each other, be nice to the, you know what I'm saying, right? Be nice to that cat.
Yeah.